So the first order of business is really to introduce my supervisor, Dr. McGregor Stevenson. He's going to give us an official welcome.
Thank you, Fred. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. As you know, the accountability system has been in place for the public institutions since, I guess, about 2005, right? 2004. And in putting that project together, it was a long, involved process that involved all of the institutions and trying to put together accountability measures and metrics that made sense for the institutions and also provided the level of information that was needed for policy making and for evaluation of the programs. With this new set of legislative directives, we're going to be working with you all trying to do the same thing, trying to develop measurements and metrics that make sense for the industry in which you all work and the variations that occur within your institutions and between your institutions. It is very critical to us that we get the frank and honest ideas and thoughts that you all have, any concerns that you have with regard to individual metrics, any metrics that we need to try and work to develop that makes sense for Texas and for your institutions and to make good policy decisions. With that in mind, I really do want to thank Texas Workforce Commission, Michael DeLong, and the staff that work with him for helping us and working with us on this, not helping with us, partnering with us on this effort and working to make sure that we're not duplicating efforts or trying to create two sets of processes rather than a single unified process, which is what we want to make sure we have so that you all aren't having to report twice or develop two sets to the best of our ability. I know that Janet Banke and Gabriella Barkamon and Cliff King and others of the coordinating board staff will be working with you throughout the course of today and tomorrow with the other set. As there are questions and concerns, please feel free to contact any of us. As Fred says, I think he's taken the brunt of this and has volunteered to be the point person in terms of the contact, and we certainly encourage you to do that. And as we move forward, it has to be a partnership with all of us involved in it, and it has to be something that we all work together on and that we do our best to avoid being directorial from the state agency to the best of our ability and still remain in compliance with the statute. And so we really do appreciate the time that you're taking from your businesses to work with us on this and to ensure we get the best possible outcome. So with that, I thank you very much, and I'll quit my monologue and let you get down to the real work. But thank you for being here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, a couple of administrative things. If you haven't been here to the coordinating board before, I was wrong. Yes. Okay. Sit down. Does it bother you? Okay. A couple things is if you need to, we're going to try to go straight through, so if you need to take a break or something, please just go ahead and do that. Restrooms are out on the other side of the hall, and we'll try to go through it.
Drinks if you need across the hall.
Right.
In that room.
So we'll try to go straight through and try to get through all the business as we can. Also, if you haven't picked up any of the memos and the material on the desk there, this could be a good time to do it because we're going to try to go through each one of those and take questions as we go. Okay. Okay. Next thing is introductions. I thought it'd be a good idea if we, even though you have the name tags, some of us have name tags. It'd be good to have everybody introduce themselves and not only maybe their role at the school as well. Okay, Wayne, you want to start there? Yeah.
My name's Wayne Cavender.
And if you would,
On the microphones.
if you would please try and talk to the microphone so the folks listening can hear, and we've got the record.
There it is. My name's Wayne Cavender. I'm an administrative assistant to the president as well as an instructor at Dallas Institute of Funeral Service.
Brad Kirkendall, Assistant Director at Western Technical College, El Paso, Texas.
Mary Cano, School Director, Executive Vice President for Western Technical College in El Paso.
Harvey Giblin, President of Virginia College at Austin.
Frank Hammock, Vice President of State Compliance, ATI Career Training Centers.
Dr. Tammy Erickson, Regional Director of Regulatory Operations, Career Education Corporation.
Phil Heine, Campus Director for Pima Medical Institute in Houston.
Suzanne Thomas, I'm Regional Director of Regulatory Operations with the CEC.
Kathleen Gukin, Director of Regulatory Affairs and Compliance for Galen College of Nursing in San Antonio.
Nancy Mabius, I'm a consultant with Community Relations for Galen College of Nursing in San Antonio.
Larry Horn, President of the Art Institute of Houston, and also representing the branch campuses for the Art Institutes in Texas.
Tanya Cummings, Director of Accreditation and Regulatory Operations for the Career Education Corporation.
Brian Silver, Campus Director, President of Sanford Brown Institute here in Austin.
Jim Brandon, Director of Admissions for Virginia College at Austin.
Maureen Clements, I'm the President of LaPorte on Blue in Dallas.
Tom Bonesteel, I'm District Manager for ITT Technical Institute here in Texas.
Hi, I'm Janet Bankey, Director of Planning with the Coordinating Board.
I'm Gabriela Borcoman, Planning and Accountability at Coordinating Board.
Michael DeLong with Career Schools and Colleges with the Texas Workforce Commission.
Okay, thank you very much. Next order of business, we're going to start with an overview. Start into business here. I think Janet's going to start with that.
Yeah, do you want it's up there. Okay. I'm going to just talk about the two bills that were passed this session so you have an idea of what it is that we're supposed to be doing here today. And then we'll get into more details. We want this to be a very informal meeting. Sounds like I'm way loud. So if, as I'm talking, if you want to stop me, just let me know in case I haven't seen you. And for everybody who's listening online, if you have questions, please email Fred at fredwhite.thecb.state.tx.us. He'll let us know whenever he does get an email from somebody out there who has a comment or a question, and we'll stop and address that issue. So we'll get right on. Okay, there were two bills. The first one we're going to talk about is SB 1534 about the accountability system for what it says is degree offering career schools and colleges. One of the first things it says in that bill is that institutional groupings can be created if it seems appropriate, and we'll discuss whether you think that is appropriate today. The next item is we're to consult with those individuals like you who represent the career institutions. And if need be, in order to implement any of this, we can adopt rules. We haven't adopted any yet, and we don't anticipate that we're going to need some, but if you feel like it would be best if we had something in rules, then we can consider that. So be sure and let us know if you think that's important. And we're also to report to the legislature on any institutions that would fall into this degree offering career colleges and schools who haven't worked with us as part of this process. Okay, that's a very, very busy slide, and I've sent the rules to you, and I've also given you in your packets of information, not the whole bills, but just the parts that really deal with what we're going to be talking about today. So it's 2 pages for the SB 1534, and you can see I've just copied from that legislation. So any degree offering career school or college that has a physical presence in Texas is to be part of the accountability system. And they describe exactly what that means. So I'm not sure if all of you are sure whether this applies to your institutions or not. And if some of you, and especially maybe those listening online, don't think this applies to your institution, Fred will be able to work with you on that aspect. Okay, And here's more on what it means for those schools who should not be included in the accountability system. So you'll notice that there are 3 items there, and then there's an and. So it has to be all 4 of these items: physically located in another state, that you have authorization by that state to operate and to award degrees, that you're accredited by a regional or national accrediting agency, and that your only presence in Texas is with distance education. So just sending something into various students in the state. So I assume that probably most of the institutions here are ones that actually are physically present in Texas. So that this part wouldn't apply to you, but for anybody who's listening online, be sure if you do write Fred and want to not be considered to be part of the accountability system, you'd have to justify why each of these measures doesn't apply to you.
Yeah, one of the issues that came up during our run to this meeting was schools that have, for the most part, are out of state, but have a internship or an externship that is at times or are here in the state, or they are arranging for internships here. And I talked to our legal staff, and they said that does count. That makes you eligible for this ruling. So you're part of that ruling, so you have to account for that.
Mm-hmm. So if you were to be offering a clinical environment here, that your students who are here, even if they're taking courses online, if they had to participate in something, a clinical or other setting here in Texas, then that would be considered a presence in Texas. Okay. So that's just a summary of what we've talked about. And then any questions about SB 1534? It's not very long bill, really, but pretty powerful in what it tells us that we need to do. So moving on to House Bill 736, and it's Section 8, and once again you have that, and I did send all those things out at earlier time. This is the one on which we were basing our online resumes, and we're directed in here to work with the Texas Workforce Commission to come up with something that works for them and for us too. So the purpose is to improve and coordinate the dissemination of online information and for those who are doing business in the state, and we're to present that information in a manner that's as like what we do for the 2-year two-year public institutions in the online resumes as possible. So before we get started with actually talking about the measures for your institutions, I'm going to show you where the accountability system is and where the online resumes are for the publics, just in case you haven't gone out to look at those items. It's to be easily accessible. Now, for the publics, they actually are very, very specific. I don't know if you happen to look at the full bill, House Bill 736, but it actually says that they're to make sure there's a link to the online resume on their first page. It's to be in a font that's bigger than anything else on the page, and all sorts of stuff. Luckily for you guys, they weren't that specific in what they expect of you. But I would imagine that the legislature would like to see a link to the online resume somewhere on your websites. So that would be something to consider doing. And those are links to the sites, and I'm actually just going to go over now to one of them, if I can get there. Let's see. Okay, so this is basically what the coordinating board's main page looks like, and there are places to get to both the accountability system and the online resumes from this page. Because I'm in the data section, I tend to use the data link here, and I find it just as easy. But you can see in the first drop down, halfway down, the sub drop down is the accountability system, and the online resumes as required by state statute are listed there. So you can get to them from that spot. I'm also going to show you, though, how to get to them from the data site, because there are some things that are on the data site that might be useful for you in the course of your your jobs. And I maybe should mention one of them might be this regional data that we have and make available to the institutions. But here's a link to the accountability system, and there you see it. There are two ways to get to the information. One way is through this interactive access to data, and the other way is to go in through these links. We've set up the accountability system in a way that mirrors our Closing the Gaps, which is the state higher education plan. So you can see we have participation, success, and down below there we have excellence in research. Those are the parts of accountability. And we've also got an institutional efficiency and effectiveness link there. Since this is the 2-year day, even though I know some of you aren't 2 years exactly, we're going to go into the community college system just as an example. When you open up the page in accountability, it always opens to the statewide data, and then there's a drop down for all the institutions, and I'm just going to pick one and we'll look at its information. I would anticipate that when we put you in the accountability system, that we then, on the first page where we have universities, community colleges, health-related institutions, we'll have another link there for career schools, and that's how everybody would get into your information in the accountability system. We have lots and lots of data here. It's far more than we anticipate putting out for your institutions, but it just gives you a flavor of what we're told that we need to kind of mirror for what we're going to do for you. You can print this out using the links up here, and we have 2 sets of information in each one of these. We have key measures, and then down below we have contextual measures. And if I can get this to work, I'm never too good with this kind of mouse. Now where am I? If you get down to the bottom of the page, which I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do, you can see it says click here to show or hide contextual measures, and that will give you another set of additional measures for each of the institutions. One thing that you can see more readily on the university site is the peer groupings that we use. And they're particularly in the online resume. So when we get over there, I'm going to show them to you. But we could potentially, for your schools, if we want to give more detailed information in the way we have here, we could create some of these extra groups of information. That may be far too much data, but that's one of the ways that we make our system more robust without putting as much on the front page as we really might like to. So you can click through the various sections of accountability up here, and I'm not going to do that because it will take me forever with this mouse, but I do want to show you also how the interactive access to data works. So if you go over to this interactive access to data, and what we find is that most of the people who are really using the websites, they want information for comparing institutions. It's much easier to get through this part of the system than it is by looking at one institution at a time in the other system. So if you click on the Go button there, and you'll see that this is mirroring the sections of the other pages, but for the key measures, if you click on any one of these plus signs, you're going to get more and more information. And so this happens to be the annual unduplicated enrollment for the institution. And then when you finally get down to the point at which you can't click any further, usually it's the years that are represented there. So we have lots of years of data. And for instance, just to show you quickly, if it does it quickly, if you click there, and you could download it to Excel. I think it'd be easier if I don't try to do that at the moment, but I'm just going to put in all institutions up here. We would have a drop down for your institutions so they could pick any of them that they wanted to for purposes of getting data, and then when you say generate for too long, we hope, it pops up with, in this case, all the years of data for the annual unduplicated enrollment for the institutions. So One reason we're discussing peer groups, you can see the groupings here that we have selected with the community colleges. These are based on their suggestions and our working with them. When you compare groups who are more similar to one another, you're going to have a more valid comparison. And so that's why we're going to start with talking about whether groupings for your institutions make sense. So that's just a quick overview of the accountability system. If I can get back out here, we'll go to the online resume, and you'll be able to see what we do, once again, for the public institutions in the online resume. The resumes for yours are to mirror this one for prospective students, public, and parents. We also have one for each of the public institutions for the legislature. But in this case, what they wanted was one that mirrored what's put out there for the public. And if we click here on two-year institutions and then do the drop-down and generate the report. And in fact, we have several years of, or a couple of years of data available. This fall, we'll have another one. It's never as fast as you want it to be, maybe I should say. Those are the add-ons, but I don't know what that means.
I have no idea if it matters or not.
So Janet,
Yes.
the handout that you have here where it says online resume for prospective.
Yes.
This is what you're proposing, this information.
I wouldn't exactly say we're proposing this. We're using it as a starting point for our conversation. What we've done is try to go in to both the accountability system for the two-year institutions and also for the four-year institutions, pick out the measures that seem like we could find the information for them, either in what you report to us or what you report to iPads, and then use that as a source of information. Come on, please.
That's why we were saying we start looking to each one, and we want your feedback if it makes sense or not.
We'll go through measure by measure of the things that are proposed, and if you don't think they make sense for your institutions, we can discuss what else might make sense. We know from having worked with Senator Shapiro and others who were very interested in the accountability system that they want more than 2 or 3 measures out there, and they want something in each of the parts of closing the gap. So we're trying to choose what we think might be at least a good starting point for that. Well, that doesn't look very promising, does it? I'm going to try to get to it from the other side because I would like to be able to show it to you, because it does list information for peers. Okay. When it comes up, we'll talk about it. But as you can see on this example of the online resume, for many of these measures, it says the average for your in-state peers, and that's what I really wanted to talk to you about, is that what we're supposed to do by legislation, everything that's on, when it comes up, the online resumes for the publics is listed in statute, item by item. And in fact, whether we should be comparing to just in-state peers or whether we should have out-of-state peers. So we're only proposing in-state peers and for your institutions, so that will match what we're to do for the 2-year colleges. And so you can see for things like financial aid, tuition and cost and enrollments and persistence, we're suggesting, and also graduation, we're suggesting that we use in-state peer groupings for those specific measures.
addressing in-state peers, are you addressing it based on career colleges or also peers considered as two-year community colleges and public institutions?
I think that's one of the discussions we'll have maybe now or the next one. So you have the handouts that I gave you, the last one, and you can see how we propose the groupings to be for you. It's just you. You compare with yourselves.
We would not be compared to other institutions.
That you want to go in accountability system and compare yourselves with the publics, that's your business. But it won't be on the resume. On the resume, you compare your institution with the group of institutions that we here will decide looks like you. So we work to come up with these groups.
Yes.
And the methodology, I try to think of a lot of criterias. And I started with what is in iPads for each one of you. And in the end, I tried to look at the size of your institution. I tried to look at your offerings, but in the end, you offer up to associate degree, not much difference there. For the 4 years, some of them offer just bachelor, the others bachelor and above, so it was more variety there. I didn't feel like I know enough to say, well, this group offer more short-term certificates or one-year certificates, the others more associate degrees. So in the end, I gave up on that. I don't know if it made sense, but I pretty much divided the institutions that seem to have an enrollment of up to 1,000 students and the ones who have over 1,000. It seemed to be a breakout there for you. I used mainly the enrollment reported in iPads. For the institutions that I didn't have in iPads, because there are a number of institutions that I guess the parent company is somewhere, and there was not a separate reporting for Texas. So it was for everybody together. Then I used what you reported to us. For the accountability system, we'll use what you report to us, unless you don't report it to us, and we'll have to take it from iPads. But we'll discuss that when we go through the measures. So pretty much, that's how these lists were put together. And what we would like for you to do is look at the institutions you represent and see if it makes sense who the others on the list with you feel are like you. If you think we should have 3 groups or 4 groups, that's fine with us. I mean, this is a starting point for the discussion, and I guess you know better who institutions like you are. But so remember, it will be side by side, your institution and your peer group. So we want for you to feel comfortable that that peer group really is your peer group.
So Larry Horn again. So basically, the criteria that used was strictly enrollment.
Pretty much.
First pass at this. Did you take into consideration regional accreditation or national accreditation?
No.
As part of the grouping, just enrollment?
Just in enrollments, because in the end, all of you are under our authorization. So from this point of view, we pretty much consider you the same. Because in the end, you have to follow the rules that we have.
One thing is we probably wouldn't want to have lots and lots and lots of very small groups. It makes a lot more work for us and doesn't offer as robust a comparison. So we're willing to hear anything you have to say about the groupings and what you think should be the criteria. Is there a consensus that you would like groups? So that's kind of the first question. Otherwise, the good example for the publics is when we talk about universities in Texas, we have things like UT, which is nearly 50,000 students, and then at the other end we have Sol Ross State University, which is like 1,000. If we put everybody together, there wouldn't be much meaning in the information that we would be putting out as the peer group average. So that's why we are suggesting that peer groups make sense for you.
And even for you, there are institutions who reported like 50-something students, and others who have 4,000. I don't think it's fair to compare the two. And they're talking about less groups. I think there were 2 or 3 institutions that were listed for us, mainly online. For 2 institutions, we didn't really want to create a group. Also, there is one institution, I don't remember which one it is, who normally is a 4-year institution. But for Texas, it was approved just a 2-year level. So all it has approved for Texas is associate degree. Well, let's say next year it will be approved for a bachelor degree, then we'll move. So whatever your group is right now doesn't mean it has to remain that way forever. You just send us an email, say, well, we changed our enrollment group or our enrollment dropped, we should be in the other group, that would be fine. But if you see something like that, it's just that we wanted less groups, not 2 or 3 institutions.
Gabrielle, are you saying that the 2 groups that you have listed here, the small and medium, the small is enrollments under 1,000?
Pretty much.
And the other ones are over 1,000?
Yes, it seemed that around 1,000, so 900 something, and it seemed to be a break for your institutions.
And that includes only degree type enrollments? Or does that include certificates and diplomas and everything?
Everybody, I looked at the enrollment. Normally, the enrollment should include everybody. Now, if you didn't report everybody in iPads, I don't know. I have no idea what to report there. But normally, it should be all the students that were reported by your institution, that attend your institution, no matter what level of degree.
And these lists are, I mean, we have an opportunity to discuss these lists
Yes,
because they're not.
Yes, that's what we're.
Yeah, I mean, who's on the list and who's not.
Right.
But you're saying groupings of 1,000 enrollments that are up to, or over 1,000. I mean, I'll just speak for myself. I would bet, knowing something about the industry, that most of us in here, there's not a lot of people that have over 1,000 enrollments.
Well, as you can see, there are almost equal. Because the small ones are up to 1,000. The second one over 1,000, and as you can see, they are pretty much equal.
This is in 1 year?
Annual enrollment, and I look to see if they are similar in the fall enrollment, because that's reported in iPads also. So that's what I looked. I look for annual enrollment, not the fall. But I was surprised how even it is. I wasn't sure if we should have, let's say, 3 groups. Maybe 1,000 shouldn't be the point. But again, we would like your input on that, which would make sense. I tried to look location, where the school is located. Well, not much difference there. You don't really have rural settings. As we have in publics. So I looked at different things, didn't make much difference.
Mary? Excuse me, please, go ahead.
Gabriella, I know our school is showing up on both lists.
Because when you have 2, you are listed with 2 locations in El Paso, and I don't know this particular one, but on the other one, it's Western Texas College El Paso East, and one is West, so it's not the same. I'm sorry, on this one that doesn't show up, but I have another list where it shows.
Okay, but
so that's why.
Taking those campuses, neither campus has 1,000 enrollments.
I don't know, but it showed up as it does. In
Well,
iPads,
cumulatively,
but that's fine.
Cumulatively, we have about 1,300 students
Annually.
For both of them together?
together, but not separate.
Okay. And do you report to us separately as East and
Yes.
West?
Yes.
Separately?
Yes.
Uh-huh. And that's probably why we're separating them out here.
And in iPads, they are separate too.
Uh-huh.
They are two different institutions.
These
My
numbers are
question
iPads,
is
right?
similar to that, in that, for example, the Art Institute of Houston has 3 branch campuses. If you took the enrollment for the main campus and its branch campuses, we're in excess of, 4,000 students. The main campus alone is in excess of, 2,000 students. I know tomorrow you're going to focus on 4-year institutions, but he's unable to be here tomorrow. So how is that measured with respect to the groupings, a main campus and its branch campus?
Well, depends on how you report and how you have the authorization from us. If it's separate for each of your branch campuses, then you are 4 institutions. If it's 1, you report as 1 and you got approved as 1. The fact that you have different locations,
Is
we
it
don't.
material with respect to your groupings?
No. So what I looked for is how you were approved by us and how you report to us and to iPads. So if you report as 1 for all the branches, if you were approved as 1, then it's 1, and if you have 8,000 students, you are with those. For the 4-year, it's a little bit different.
And if you're a 4-year institution, and you may at some point in time offer graduate degrees, you would still fall in the 4-year institution.
The 4-year institutions are divided in 4-year institutions that offer up to a bachelor degree and the 4-year institution bachelor and above, and each one of those are small, medium, and large because it's a bigger difference between small and medium, and large that is for the 2-year.
Right.
So that will be a discussion tomorrow. So, as I said, if you offer bachelor degree and then you are approved for a higher, you'll move in the other group at that time. But at this point, it's depending how you were approved and how you report.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
Tom.
I have a question. What is your definition of an enrollment?
Okay, the number of students, I'm telling you the definition in iPads and what basically we want for you to report to us. The number of students that attend your institution in a given period of time, if it's annual or fall. For iPads, I think fall enrollment is October 15. Annual is annual for the fiscal year that is defined September 1st, August 30th. One time.
And so we'll talk about those partly for the groupings, but partly because those are obviously measures that we're going to be suggesting reporting out on both the online resume and the accountability system.
So for iPads at least, we assume that each institution reported the way the definitions require them to report. So, because frankly, there was, when I compared what you reported to us versus what it was reported to iPads for the same period of time, there were several institutions that the difference was big. So one of my questions to you is why that happened. That those numbers should be, let's say not identical, but almost. So
Would you accept the iPads statistics?
for enrollment and graduation that you report to us, we'll use ours. So I don't know if you don't report all your students, you just assume that we don't want all your students. I don't know why you would assume that, but, you know. Or I couldn't find an explanation. But please, if you don't have an answer now, go back and try to find out, and we'll appreciate your feedback why that may happen, because it shouldn't be.
And if any of you want to go back and talk with others at your institution about where you think you should be located in terms of peer groups, that's fine, and get back with us. But at least today, we'd like to get, if possible, some kind of consensus on what kind of groupings make sense for your institutions. Because we think groupings are the way to go for more accurate information, but.
And it's in the bill anyway, about grouping,
It says-
sending the resumes will be the peer groups. So. And if you want to compare yourself with everybody, and that's your peer group, but I don't imagine you want that.
I don't think so. So, go
Okay,
ahead.
if I make sure I'm understanding, when we report everything, whether it's in a degree course or a certificate of course, we report all of that information.
Right.
to
And
you.
the same as.
And I think where some of them may be getting, confused is that some of them may only be reporting to you just the degree students.
But you
Where
should.
an iPads would be the whole group of students.
But we
throughout the
would
school.
like you to report everybody, because the students who get the certificate, they earn something. I mean, it's.
Yeah, but
Why shouldn't you?
You were wondering about why there was such a difference, and I think that would be probably the explanation, is that schools are reporting to you just what's going on in the associate degree, not what's happening in all of the certificate as well as degree, courses. And that in iPads, it has everything, so that could be the
Okay.
best.
We'll make sure that we emphasize that we want all the students, just like with the community colleges, they report to us the students who are just working on certificates.
And the methodology from iPads to coordinating board are exactly the same? Or there's
Well, at least for the enrollment, it's everybody who's enrolling you is not really fancy calculations here. We just add all the students that you report to
You
us.
just mentioned that it should almost always be, which is what.
Well, sometimes that's why I looked at the annual enrollment, because you report to us annually. So we said, okay, fall semester, if they were enrolled between September and December. And iPad says enrollment up to October 15. Now that can give you some differences, because it can be the other 2 months. Probably if we'll do that with we'll stop it in October to be closer to iPads. But you need consistency, because if you report only associate degrees and your peer groups report certificate also, you'll have a lower enrollment. And when you compare yourself, it'll be, well, I'm so much lower than my peers.
Gabriella, it says unduplicated. Does that mean that a student counted in 1 year should not be counted in the next year?
No, it's just for a year. So that student is counted only once within that year. Okay?
And not the next year then?
The next year he'll be counted again.
Okay.
In the annual unduplicated.
In the annual.
Okay.
Okay.
Could you please email possibly the institutions where you found the discrepancy, as opposed to everyone going back and asking? I can see that causing a major upheaval, like we did what?
Well, I don't really think at this point is important. I just want to give you a heads up that we found that.
Okay.
We don't say go back and report again or something like that.
No,
but you may find that maybe you are not in the right group. You may be in the medium, should be in the medium group, but because of this you ended up in the small, or the other way around. So that's why we asked you to look at your grouping, if it makes sense and reflects what you do. Like the Western, Technical Western College.
I have a question.
Okay.
Have you guys considered, I think you mentioned a little bit earlier that you want to keep the groups to a minimum. Maybe consider just looking at small, medium, and large?
Yes.
And breaking those up, 0 to 400, 400, 800, 800 above?
Let's discuss which would be a breakout that would make sense.
Put numbers to it.
0 to 5.
500?
5 to 9.
Without knowing what all the enrollments are of all the schools, it's really difficult to say where that cutoff should be. So, knowing your institution, nobody says, oh, you should know it's 950, but if you are 2,000, probably.
And we can send out to you, though, what we've gotten, both off of our information and off of iPads.
And I looked at 2 years, so for fiscal year 10 and 9, and you're pretty much in the same range.
I think we do need to put numbers to it, actually, because I have a campus that is about 400, and it seems, I don't know that the data would be so valid and the information that you would get back as you compare between a campus of 400 perhaps and a campus of 800 that still stays within that small as it is here. So it might make sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I just didn't have a feel which ones that magic number should be. What?
My question is, who is looking at this data outside our own institutions, and what are they doing with this data outside our own institutions?
Once it's on the website.
Yeah, we can't tell you exactly who's using it, but I know certainly for what's out there for the publics, we have many people who are just in the public who call and ask us about the data that's reported there.
The legislators may look, we don't know, but it's out there.
Referring to it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and we certainly know for the publics, when the universities are being questioned about things, the legislators will be there online and saying, I see this and I see that. So certainly, and we know at the national level there's a lot of interest in this topic too. So we assume that there will be people looking at this information, and clearly what they are hoping is that students and parents look at it so they can get an idea of the characteristics of an institution before they.
Analysis,
yeah.
What about using the fiscal year end or for the census, using the census versus the iPads?
What do you mean census?
Well, the total census of the college at a certain point, any given point, we all know that.
We're going to discuss the measures themselves in just a little while, but this first effort was going to be on whether we need groupings, and I think the consensus is yes. And we were kind of hoping that maybe we could have just one meeting so that we wouldn't inconvenience people too much. So if we can't figure out what groupings seem appropriate until Gabriella sends the information out, we could do an online effort to, if that's about the only thing that's left that we need to do. If there are just lots and lots of questions, we may need another meeting. But if it's only about what the size ranges for the grouping should be, then we could probably complete that part of the process online. So
because at this point with the grouping, with the 0 to 500, 500 to 9, I'm hearing that the the institutions that are in the small group, small institution group, should be divided into small and medium, and the one that is called medium, it would be the large. That's what I'm hearing at this point.
I thought I heard maybe 0 to 500.
Yeah,
500
yes, the small institutions are up to 1,000. So that it doesn't seem that the second group would be affected in this scenario because they are all over 1,000.
I think that's correct.
Okay. Do you think that over 1,000 should be? Well, there are some 3,000 enrollment between themselves for some institutions. So I don't know.
I think with respect to your discussions tomorrow for four-year colleges, you may have to really look at increasing that enrollment by groups to a higher level.
Right.
Yes,
Those are totally
we do.
different.
We do. Because so you have University of Phoenix with 1,000. Definitely you don't want.
Are we grouping brick and mortar students along with online students into one category?
For this type of institution, there were just 2 or I don't even think there were 3 institutions that had completely online. So I didn't think that just leaving them on by themselves would be appropriate. So in this case, yes, but again, maximum 2 in a group.
But the online students and the on-campus students are together.
What happens if the online classes are taught in a different state?
We don't want them in our numbers. in the numbers you report to us, and that's another issue we're going
You do
to
or
be.
do not, I'm sorry.
Do not. We
Texas students. We are talking about the Texas students.
And that is one of the reasons for enrollment. We'll be using the data you report to us because we hope you're reporting only your Texas students to us. We have the same issue with the public institutions, and many of them have online programs that they offer even out of the country. And we don't really feel like that's what the legislature is interested in, some student who will never come to Texas. And we feel like that same thing is true for your reporting to us.
So the difference would be where the enrollment agreement was originated, whether it was originated in Texas or online from a different state, or how do you differentiate?
It's about Texas students.
So you will be determining that.
It's up to you. So if you serve students in Arkansas and they are Arkansas residents, you don't report them to us. If you are located in Arkansas, but you have a presence here, you just report to us the Texas students. You have Arkansas students, Texas students, it's your business. We are interested in Texas students. And in iPads, I assume because it was a location in Texas with the Texas address, that the students reported there as Texas address would be Texas students. But that's why we prefer what you reported to us.
So are you concerned that it's going to be difficult for you to know for your online students where they're located?
Well, we enroll online students both from Arizona and from Texas, and I'm just wondering if it makes any difference where they're enrolled from.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. The only concession that we make for the publics is if you're a military person who had Texas as your residence originally and you're now somewhere around the world, you're still considered a Texas student even if you haven't been here for quite a while. But other than that, we want Texas students. And part of the reason for wanting your Texas students is that in our higher education plan, Closing the Gaps, we actually use the number of students who enroll at your institutions towards our number of total enrollments of Texas students in Texas. So,
If I could go back to just iPads for a minute, I think maybe a point of clarity, and I don't have a copy in front of me, and I don't know if anyone has a report in front of them, but I think on iPads, they take your enrollments and your starts and add it to your current population to determine your fall enrollments. So that's why it may be being a lot larger than maybe some of you think enrollments really are.
yeah,
But I'm
and
not
those are
having
the
that for a fact in front
yeah.
of me.
We aren't familiar at all with what you report to iPads. You know, we printed out information, but we're going to have to rely on you to know when we're talking about measures whether what you report to iPads is different than us. And
I'm familiar with what our public universities report because in the accountability system for universities, we have comparison with out-of-state peers. So for out-of-state peers, we have no other source than iPads. So everything for Texas institutions and their out-of-state peers, we pull from iPads. And their enrollment, the Texas institutions in iPads and what they report to us, it's pretty much the same. So I can work to modify this in 3 groups then. It will make sense to you, and I can email you the new list with the enrollment that I'm using, so you can see where I'm coming from. And everybody, you are comfortable with the medium group that will become the large group. So you think that's fair? It's okay to remain as it is.
I think if we could reserve the option to really revisit that once you regroup it and send it back out to both the 2-year and 4-year institutions, we have a chance to speak with our colleagues to take a look at that as well.
Well, we expect sort of as a procedure, we send out the new list, and then you email me back with your feedback. If you don't email me back with feedback regarding your institution, I'll just assume that you are comfortable where it is placed, and that will be it.
So if we have a discrepancy with what you have now, we should send you an email asking why we're on this list and think we should be on that list.
Yes. Yes. I mean, we are not stuck on this list.
Yeah. So we just always know if there's a starting point, it's much easier than creating something from scratch. So that's why
We're just trying to become compliant.
We try that too.
Yeah, I was just going to say that once we decide on the 3 groups, it sounds like it's going to be 3, the methodology for determining what your enrollment number isn't up for debate. It's what we report in the system. And if you don't like being on a list, it doesn't matter. The number is the number. And we've decided, at least for today, that it's these 3 groups.
Well, let's put it this way. If you are not comfortable with the number reported there, I can put what you reported to us and what you reported to iPads. If you don't like one of them, I suggest you go back to your reporting official, the person who compiled those numbers and that reported, and see what's going on. Because we have these issues with Publix too, and they ended up saying, oh, but we shouldn't have this in iPads, and they corrected the numbers or they corrected ours. So go back first to your reporting officials and see how they are doing it, what they consider, do they follow the instructions in the definitions.
And you're talking about the 12-month enrollment, the annual.
Yes, because
annual.
we have the annual enrollment, it will be easier to have the annual with annual in iPads. So.
And one thing that we noticed with the public institutions, because this has been now going on for quite a long time with them, each year the reporting to us has been improving as they have a chance to see, oh, this is what I reported, that's not right, and then they go back and have to make some changes. So we know that the first year of reports coming out usually isn't the most accurate, and things tend to get better as time goes on. So we anticipate that'll probably happen with this situation too, and that's why we leave everything fairly fluid. The measures themselves have changed many, many times for the publics. The basics are still the same, but as they look at something over time and think, I really don't think that has much meaning for us, then they'll suggest something else and we can change measures. So we'll work on the same kind of process with you. So anything that we agree to for this year will be for this year. And then if you want to meet every year to discuss, at least in the first few years, to discuss the measures, that's fine with us.
And just email us at any time during the year if you have a question or something doesn't make sense to you or you don't understand where that number comes from. So feel free to email us anytime.
Okay, so it sounds like we can move on to the next topic. Gabriella will send that information out to you with the 3 new groups, and if you have any comments, we'll try to collect everything and give the consensus of the group back to you as information on what we intend to do. So now we're going to move away from the groups and talk about the accountability system itself. So you're going to have 2 documents to work from. One is the measures themselves, and one is the definitions. And you should have copies of both of those. Most of the items that are on the online resume are the same as some parts of the accountability system, so that's why we're going to start with accountability and work down through it, and then when we're finished, we can move on to the online resume, and by that time, maybe most of the issues related to the resume may have been resolved. I know Gabriella wants to discuss them together, but
I just want to mention that we had a group here, Tom and Maureen, in December, before it was mandated. The association thought, well, it would be great if we have a report with our activities. So we started discussing measures. So what you see here, this list, is based on the discussion we had at that time.
So you can throw things at him.
So start with Tom. Ask Tom why. But I just wanted to let you know that we had a discussion before, and that's where we started. with the results of that discussion.
Okay, so the first item we have up there is the fall headcount unduplicated. Now, unduplicated was because the way we were thinking about running it was count every student who was there between September and December.
Now, because now we know fall enrollment in iPad, it's October, October 15. We don't have it quite so precise in what you report to us. Would you like a fall enrollment to be up to October, or the way we pretty much did it before, September to December?
For consistency purposes, wouldn't it make sense for it to be the same reporting period? That we
I'm
report for
asking you.
iPads that we report to
Does that
your
make
office?
sense?
Okay,
so
Less likelihood that there would be an error.
probably we'll put October, or the whole month of October, because I don't think we have day. Right, Cliff? We don't have. We have months. Just the month. Yeah.
From the start, it's the start. Within that reporting period.
I would recommend that.
Okay. Does that seem reasonable to everybody else? Okay. And as much as possible, if you report something to us, we're going to have the default be using our information. That's what we can really be assured we know about. And then if we can't get it from something you report to us, then we'll go out and look at iPads and see if we can get it there.
And we'll get to measures that we'll discuss exactly that, how to do it. Does it make sense to you for ethnicity, gender, and age? We have other things for publics, but
Are these the same as the iPads categories?
This is actually something that was down at the bottom of the list for us to talk about later, but we should probably address it now because it will affect this. Currently, you report to us not in the categories that iPads requires, and are you reporting to iPads in the new 2-question format already? So, okay. So we weren't sure.
I think it wasn't mandatory for them this year, but it will be next year.
Okay. So then you can assume that you will be reporting to us in the two new categories, and we'll make changes to our reporting manual and to everything else that has to go along with that, so that you'll be reporting in those 2 categories. The things that we have reported up here and the kind of progression we use to decide if a student answers the first question on are they Hispanic or not, we put that student as Hispanic. And so we don't consider the race of the student if they say they're Hispanic in the first question. Then for those students who've answered no or didn't answer the first question, we look and see if they have answered just one race. And we put white, African American, Asian. Actually, the very first thing we do is take out international students. Do many of you have international students?
We have some.
Okay. So we actually take them out first and put them separate. I don't know if it makes sense for your institutions to lump international with other or not, but we can discuss that. And Asian is actually Asian and Hawaiian Pacific Islander combined. Because the public institutions were quite concerned with this new 2-question reporting and then the multiple race reporting of the students, they were concerned that their African American numbers might drop. We said that we would run it at first using this, what you see is the third measure there. Take them out if they're African American only, but if they report African American as one of their racial categories, we would put them in this second multiracial, one of which is African American. We were thinking about doing away with that category because for the statewide, it didn't seem to matter, but for several institutions, it actually does matter quite a bit. So we're keeping it for the publics. We don't have to keep it for you. So right now, it's it's students who've reported one of their racial categories as African American. And then everybody who is in other are the ones who were unknown, who didn't report to us, and we always hear that there are more and more students who aren't giving that information. And the students who reported multiple ethnicities, one of which is not African American. Okay, does that make sense? And you may find it kind of interesting. I did when we looked at actually the students who reported 2 races. The most common was white and Native American. The second most was white and Asian. And then the third was white and African American. So we were surprised about that because we've never had very high Native American numbers in the public institutions.
So when you have multiple ethnicities and they're not African American, where do they go?
They go to other with the unknowns and with the Native Americans.
All right.
Does it make sense to you to keep it the same, or for you?
I think it's fine.
I think this is hard to say. I think that is a regional question. And it's going, I know in El Paso, we're far west Texas,
Yeah.
I think we're going to find a number of individuals that are white and Hispanic.
Yeah,
you know,
and
they're considered the same, but you'll see the same thing. They'll separate those two out.
But we pull the Hispanics off first. So if you're Hispanic is Hispanic regardless of race.
Hispanic is regardless of race. I don't know. That would not be imperative information in El Paso. It really wouldn't.
Yeah, I can see that.
I mean, we have a number of individuals that are military, and they're from different parts of the country. So we do see a number of individuals that are African American that were from the military now living in El Paso. But I don't see the value in that.
Publics.
Yeah.
I mean, the Publix in El Paso area.
Yes.
Are there any financial ramifications to this for the public institutions or not? Or
No.
is it just
No.
kind of an information piece only
No, but in closing the gaps, it's separated.
for you guys? Yes.
So
Is
we'll
Ameri-
add your numbers by ethnicity to the closing the gaps the same way.
Is American, do you mean Native American?
No, that's African.
No, it's African American.
Yeah,
It's just a line.
it doesn't print out well.
I thought first.
That's a
Usually we,
race.
and I should go in there now and maybe change it. Usually we abbreviate.
Age, do you think it makes sense for you to have it by age? These are the groupings we have for Publix. I don't know if yours is different.
Yeah, I think it's good to have comparisons.
I don't know if you have older students, if you want to divide over 35 more.
Yes.
Why is there an NA on age?
Because some students don't report their age.
Okay.
Or the birthday can be incorrect reported, so we cannot calculate it.
All right, just wondering.
And with over 35, you mean 35 and over, right? Because otherwise there's not a category
Yes,
for 35.
you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a lot of 45 years old, maybe
No,
you...
he means that we've just phrased this wrong.
Oh, okay.
If I can figure out where delete is here.
So...
There's a pretty large gap from 35 and over to be inclusive of everyone that's in that particular age grouping, especially with the four-year institutions.
So you think we should have
The older
more?
I get, the more I resent being asked, how old are you? But
Hey, the more I'm glad to be lumped with 35.
all the recent forms are the last, box that you can check. But
Yeah.
iPads is not as narrow as this, is it? Does anybody know?
No, I don't think so.
I mean, why do you have only 3 years between some of them, then you go to 4 years? What's the intent there?
Because in the Publix, we have more. We are interested in those.
Yeah.
That's why I'm asking for you, 18 to 21, maybe not won't be so. Maybe you want 18 to 25. It makes more sense to you.
I know that for us, wherever possible, we would like to align with iPads as much as possible, not only to reduce the administrative burden to us, but to not be confusing with duplicative measures for the consumers and their families.
Yeah. In this case, I think you're reporting the date of birth or the...
We compile this, so it's not like you report to us using those ranges, because you report the birth date of your student. So we calculate it from there.
I'm not sure I understand what you're saying. So you'll calculate a different range for each school on here?
Yeah, we do that. No, we calculate the age based on the birth date that you report to us, and when we summarize your enrollment by categories, we can create those categories as you want.
By institution or
No, for the group.
For the group, for the institution.
This accountability system will be the same for all of you. So we need to come up with a common.
Yeah.
Are the guidelines going to be specific about when their birthday is or something? Somebody could be 24 when they start and then 25 when the report comes out. Are there going to be guidelines going to be specific about that? Or
We have a methodology, and we consider the age as of September 1st.
Okay.
When is the beginning of the school year.
I see. Okay.
So that's how we calculate. We'll calculate the same for your students as we do for public. Wait.
I can't remember that specifically.
Or we can leave it like that for now, and after you see the reports, maybe you say we'd like
It's going to be harder for us to
change.
To
We'd
get
like
consensus later. I think the
question too was consistency from how and what we report to iPads to be the same in reporting to our agency here.
Yeah, but you don't report,
a
birth date to iPad, so...
But you need that information.
Yeah.
You report it to us right now. It's about how we summarize the information for you. And we can do it either way.
And I'll try to see what we have in iPads here.
But our goal in general with these measures and this data is to put out something that makes sense to you and it's useful to you. If the majority of your students are over 25, having split the rest of 1% into 3 groups may not make sense.
It looks like, at least on this one printout that I have, it says 24 and under, 25 and over, and unknown. Those are very big categories, but you could calculate the 24 and under by all those. That's one of our breaks. So if you wanted to match with iPads and see if it's the same, we would just be doing a little more discreetly. The reason for all the breakdowns in the smaller and lower ages is the interest in the legislature and others of how many students are going from high school into college, and how long they delay, that kind of thing. So that's why we tend to have more categories than you might be reporting.
Yeah, but does it make sense for you?
Well, I think this goes without saying, but I think overall the gist here is that a lot of our schools have set up our data banks to be able to easily count information for iPads, and so anything where you can be as close to iPads as possible makes it easier for us.
But you don't report to us counting. You report every student separately with the student's birth date. So that's what you report to us. You don't change in your database anything. You are set up right now to report every student with their birth date. And we are doing those.
We just group based on their age as calculated of September 1st of each year. So
you are already set up. Okay, when we worked on this, one of the things we try to do is not to request anything more from you than you already report to us. So whatever you see here, we already have from you. When it's something we don't have, we'll mention it. But here on this page, there's nothing more you have to report to us
The
except.
information we send you, you just interpret it
Yes.
and put it into these
Yes.
different groupings, so there's no additional input.
Right, and we're not asking you to report anything new. The only new thing will be the ethnicities, and that has to be done. So, and we're trying to make this as painless as possible. I know it may not seem that way, but we really are.
We have input from Remington College, and they are talking about having 35 to 39, 44 to 49, 50 to 64, and 64 and up. That's their grouping that would like.
Yeah, those are age
Their
groups.
age ranges. So instead of having 35 and up, they have 35, 39, 40, 49. Till 64 and up.
But you'll break out all that information.
Yes, right. It won't.
No.
It's just a matter of what we
just
show.
need you to tell us how much breakouts you want.
I think that would be very good. You know,
You
we
like
we have a tendency to have a few more older students than probably what the publics would have. I think breaking out the 35s and above a little bit more would be good. But since, you know, it doesn't create any more hardship on the school,
No.
I think it's
No.
just
Okay.
add those other groups.
Is that the consensus of the group, that works for you? Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay. Okay, now we'll move on down to our next one.
And the same for the annual unduplicated, right? In terms of gender and age. And when we'll do age, we'll do for all measures the same way.
Now, you can see I've highlighted there in non-credit students, that's what the community colleges report to us with their annual unduplicated, or what we report out from their information, because they wanted to make sure we were counting everything that they do, not just their credit students. Does that have any meaning for you? Are all your students credit students?
Right now.
Okay, so I'm just going to get rid of that.
We'll just say annual unduplicated enrollment without specifying credit, no credit.
For now.
And in terms of the years, what I did when I created this was just copy and paste, obviously, from the one that's out there for the 2-year institutions. We'll look and see what information we have for past years for you, and we'll put it up there, whatever seems appropriate. What we've always tried to do for the publics is use the year 2000. That's when Closing the Gap started, and show movement beyond that and give the prior year and the current year. So as much as we can do that, we'll try to do the same thing for you.
For you, I think the maximum, Cliff knows better, I think we have 5 years or 6 years. But the first year, not for everybody, but the first years usually weren't so great. So probably 3 years back would be where we'll start for your institutions. Okay, service area representation. This comes from the discussions we had in December. It's a measure where from community colleges they have a service area. And the measure says if their enrollment matches the ethnic composition of their service area. And discussing with the group in December, they said, well, we want to show that we serve the area where we are located. And at that time, we were saying, okay, how we define the area? And we have higher education regions, that each one of you belong to a region. So if you look in the definitions, that's how it's defined. this measure actually may not make any sense for you. You may not want it. So, but with the higher ed regions, it's the only one that we can use. Yeah.
So what you're saying is if I've been living in West Houston, this would give me the information from a certain area around it where my location is within a few zip codes?
From the higher ed regions.
Big regions. We have 10 of them, so it would be all of south, east. It's really
by city or?
It's based by county. We have to do things where we can, especially if we're looking forward to try to get what the enrollments are compared to the population of the counties. As you move away from the census year, the only place we can get that is the Texas State Data Center's projections. And so those are all based on counties, not on subgroups of counties. So we have to use something that's got a county flavor to it. Now, we thought about the regions just because they are kind of big, and I can actually show you. Well, actually, go ahead.
No, the community colleges have their service areas, and they pretty much correspond to the taxing areas that are very well defined in the statute. So that's what they compare themselves with. You don't have universities. Don't have service area for them. Service area is the state, so they compare themselves with the high school graduates. That's where the comparison is. For your institutions, as I said, I'm not even sure it makes sense for you. It's really up to you.
The first question is, do you want to measure like this?
Like
we put it in because of the conversation in December, but
I think the conversation in December, that's been
a few months ago.
We've been doing other things, but I think that it was to identify if somebody that lives within 5 miles or 10 miles, what the ethnic demographics are of that school.
But we can't
before they go there.
Yeah, and we can't do that.
The closest we can do is in the county that you are located. That's the closest we can do.
Some of our institutions, we have
Right.
student housing.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, and I don't remember if we put this one on for the four-year institutions or not.
I don't think so.
The reason the community colleges like it is because they feel like they try to reach out into the community, and this would be one way to show their concern for the changing demographics of the state. Well, we'll have I don't remember if it's in there, but if it is, we'll have the same discussion with the 4 years tomorrow. So if you want to just weigh in on it, one way or the other for the 4 years, we can say what your opinion was. But for those of you who are with the 2-year institutions, do you think
I really don't see where it would be of that much value to it if we're breaking it down by having to go by these service areas. That's not going to be as beneficial to us, and I don't know that it would matter that much to any potential students or anybody else that would be, looking at the data, whether we're reaching students within an area, certain area or not. It's awful hard to break it down even by county when you're in the large metroplex area, because you're going to be bringing in students. Maureen, y'all bring in both from Dallas and Tarrant and all around the area where, you would probably overlap even from the metroplex even into Central Texas, part of it. So I don't know that would be, I don't see the benefit of it for us and how it would impact people seeking information, about our particular school. I think it would be just a lot more work that would not show the benefit.
I think it'd be very interesting. Nursing schools, we have to demonstrate that we're meeting the need. Very interesting to compare.
Have you thought, or do you have access to your database of the different region centers for public ed, like K through 12, and then like
Yeah, they're ESC.
Those regions, which are different than I think the higher ed. And that might be, interesting in terms of those recent grads that are obviously graduating and then, coming to the schools. I don't know.
Yeah,
But it would be a sensible way of dividing people.
So you are saying K-12 regions?
I think there are 20, are there 20, 23, okay. We can check into that. What's, yeah. Any other ideas or suggestions? Or
one suggestion was to get rid of it.
Yeah.
Well, I think by doing it that way too, you can use the CEB codes off of our reporting every year to match up a lot easier than through these 10 regions versus the K through 12 regions, which would probably be easier. Your end.
Right.
But I'm not sure what to refer to.
It's high school.
The high school. But that's
so
not.
we just use the fact that the student's attending your institution, and we wouldn't go back and pull the high school's demographics. We would always go to something else that's indicative of what's going on in the larger non-education arena.
Gotcha.
So the population, the whole population of that area.
Okay.
Now, if you think kind of generally you'd like a measure like this, at least some of you would, we could see what we can do with matching it to the TEA codes.
It's pretty logical to the locations of those, and so it would work for what you're talking about.
We could try it and put it out there and let you look at it.
County is also good if you have.
County, yeah.
County, I think it's the easiest available.
Yeah, the easiest for us.
And maybe consider like Houston or Dallas, Metroplex, a multitude of counties that form that big metroplex.
Or we could even do MSAs if they're county-based or something.
Could that be something that they could do if they have the interactive, like that kind of thing, be interactive only, not necessarily?
Usually we have everything that's in the, yeah. I don't know. Okay, well, we'll think about what we can do with that.
Excuse me, Jen. We have comments from the broadcasting, if you can talk into the mics. So turn them on if they're not on.
Okay. So we'll go ahead and try to do something maybe either with the county or the TEA areas and let you see what the results look like. I guess this is probably a good point for me to mention that even once we have this data available, our IT section's going to have to put it into something that will make it appear on the web, and we know that takes a long time. So we may be going back to you first with just Excel charts or something, or spreadsheets to give you the information back. It might not look like this format initially. Okay, so the next one we have is first-time undergrads.
First-time undergraduate enrollment. You are supposed to report that to us. There is an item on the report. Do you know how accurate that is that you report to us? That's first time in college students. We didn't really use it for you up to now. We don't really know. There is, I saw it reported in iPads also. I didn't compare that one. So we use usually this for cohorts for graduation. So it will be good to be accurate for graduation rates.
Question on that is, that information is only as good as what the student will tell you unless they have a transcript they want to get transfer credits into your organization for.
Okay. So do you not look to see if they're a high school grad?
Oh, yeah, we
Or-
look to see if they're a high school grad,
Uh-huh.
but not if they're a first time. The definition of what you, I believe before is, if you got out of high school in 2010 and you start, in June, and you started Houston Community College in September of 2010, you would always only be a first-time student at that school. So if you came to ITT in January or December, you finished it and started there, unless that person transferred credits in, we wouldn't necessarily ask them, did you go to some other school? So that's the accuracy level that you have. Because I did check on this when I went back.
Yeah, we are aware of that with the public institutions too. That's not always totally accurate. And in fact, what we usually find for them is they've missed a lot of students who are really recent high school graduates. They miss sometimes because the student's been taking dual credit, or they just don't indicate it on a form, and so they miss them. And then when we match back to the high school graduates, we find them. So we've been trying to work with the publics to help them make that more accurate. But for you guys, you're reporting quite long after the fact. And is this a measure you care about?
We don't get very many first-time.
Okay. Any of you have a lot of first-time undergrads that you'd like to mention?
Well, we have a fair number, but I don't know how critically important that would be to report that. I mean, it's a good thing, but
Yeah. Okay,
I don't know
so
if the consumers for what we do. So.
let's just say you don't really want this one.
I don't care about it,
Okay.
For us, that is important for the graduation rate. So we don't.
But
if it's not important, this measure for you, it's not. But when you will calculate graduation rate, that first time in college is what we're using.
But if they're all captured as a start, as a graduate, then they should be covered, right? Whether it's their first or second. Or...
If they are not first time in college, theoretically they are not in the cohort.
And we may need to talk about how to do grad rate when we get to that point.
Get there.
Financial aid, percent of your students receiving Pell Grants?
Okay, I think this warrants a discussion that you don't report to us Pell Grants. The public institutions do, but you don't. So this one, if you look in the definitions, we'll take from iPads, if it's okay with you, whatever you report there, because we don't really have anything else from you. And in iPads, there are separate Pell Grants and other type of grants, federal, local, institutional. Do you want all of them or just Pell?
What's being asked of us in the statute?
They don't say specific.
It says to match as much as possible what the two-year institutions are doing on online resume, and for that we show grant and scholarship aid, the percent of the undergraduates who receive it, and then the average amount. And Pell and federal student loans are the categories, because we now get this information from iPads too.
We're taking the information that public institutions provide to iPads and then disseminate that into this report.
Starting this year, we used to run it based on what was reported to us, and then now the statute says we should use the College Navigator information, which is iPad.
So you are okay with, and you want all the categories are reported in iPads?
Or would you rather just have Pell?
Just Pell?
Okay.
I would recommend Pell and scholarships.
And let's see.
What is included there? Pell Grant, federal, state, local, institutional, and other sources of grant aid, and federal loans.
If you're looking at scholarships, I'm sure there's a variety of types of scholarships being offered by all the different institutions, so it wouldn't necessarily be look from institution to institution.
That's why I was asking. It will be institutional aid, but just having institution. And if we put more than Pell, probably they will want federal loans too.
Now, for the online resume, we probably will use all the categories that we're required to use, you know, if it's okay with you. That's this one, yeah.
The three.
It captures it pretty well.
So
Okay. And
we
I'll
just put it the same in accountability system.
Okay. Right.
And I think this is the end of the participation area.
So we'll be moving on to success. Once again, this is cut and paste from what we do for the public. So the first measures deal with persistence rates. I would think that that would be a pretty logical thing to include, but is that the consensus of this group? We do it from after 1 year and after 2 years. And now for students who may graduate, we're actually taking those out of the cohort each time because we're getting more and more students who come in with so much either dual credit or advanced placement that they graduate within 2 years. So we really wouldn't want them necessarily to be persisting. So we take them out of the numerator and denominator.
And just to explain to you a little bit about the same institution and other institution, you report social security numbers to us. What we do with the other institution, we'll look for those students everywhere in Texas, public, private, career schools. If we find them somewhere, they are considered persistent. So that's the difference.
So persisting at the same institution couldn't mean that they are not in the same program any longer, but at least they're at your institution.
And if they move to a public institution, they will be in that other category.
So is this something you think you'd like to include? And if so, what kind of breakouts would you like? Yeah.
To clarify, the other institution is another career school as well as a public?
Whatever is in Texas.
The problem is with career, it would make it a little bit harder because you report after the fact, and at probably be the same time we would be running this measure. So if everybody hasn't finished reporting, then we wouldn't be able to run it. So at the moment when we run it for publics, it's only publics and independents because the independent institutions report to us every semester too.
Because of your annual reporting, it's hard to include. Usually for the 2 years, yes, career schools will be included. But it doesn't make sense to look for a year old. We won't find them there. And only in Texas, not outside Texas. Would it make sense for your type of institution to do 1 year and 2 years? Would you have after 2 years? Or that measure with persistence in 2 years wouldn't make sense for you?
Tomorrow.
Yeah, tomorrow, yes.
What you're saying is that, does somebody take more than 2 years to get through a program?
Yeah.
Of course they do.
I'm not sure.
But I mean, do they take over 3 years? But if they, then it would be a different issue because you're at 150% and all that other stuff. So, I would say 1 and 2 is probably adequate, because at 3, then they probably, unless they change
Yeah,
programs.
and we only do it for 1
For
and
the
2, even for the universities, four-year institutions.
So in case you have a one-year certificate, they graduated during that year, they are not back in fall, we'll remove them from the cohort so you won't be penalized that they didn't return. They shouldn't. I mean, they're not supposed to return. So you won't be penalized if somebody graduates. We had that issue. That's why we decided to remove them.
Okay. So we'll keep 1 and 2 years. Do you like these breakouts by ethnicity?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay. Okay. And just to help keep us on track, it's 2:46 now, and we were going to go until 4, so we've got about an hour and 15 minutes. We can run over for our sake because we're going to be here anyway, but you guys may want to get out of here. So, yeah.
Question regarding persistency. What are there going to be guidelines regarding students who leave school and then come back at a later date?
No, it's a point in time. So they were in your institution this fall. We'll look, are they at your institution next fall? We didn't find them, they didn't graduate, they didn't persist. They come back in spring, 2 years later, the second fall are there, they will be counted in the 2-year persistent rate. So it's that point in time.
And maybe, Gabriella, we should talk about what returning in the fall means, because do you want it just to be September, October, or would it be anywhere?
In
September through December.
September, December.
It could be anywhere for those institutions that have multiple starts each year. And
Yeah.
even, mini starts or mid-session starts. I know we have a start in November.
Right. That's why we are asking.
So how would you like us to run it? Any student who returns any time between September and December? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. Now we're moving on to graduation rates, and these are the way we report them for the community colleges, but once again, they may not be appropriate for you. We look at 3-, 4-, and 6-year graduation rates, starting with a cohort of first-time in college students. And for the graduation and persistence, we include those who are still persisting along with the graduation rate. You want to say anything?
What we considered for you was 3 and 4 years. 6 years seemed too long. Because for community colleges, we look if they also transferred and got a bachelor degree. So that was the reasoning for 6 years. What would make sense for you? Is 3 and 4 years reasonable?
And we do it like the definition that IPEDS uses of first-time, full-time. So.
And we also have, I'm not sure if we have it here, but for publics, we do a graduation rate for full-time students and for part-time students. What would make sense to you? Probably if the first time in college, it's not really, we'll consider it the first time at your institution when they start, because we don't seem to have anything else. Just for your information, for public, we look when they are coded first time in college, let's say at Austin Community College. They move to San Marcos, they graduate from San Marcos, Austin Community College still gets the credit. The person in their cohort graduates, so their graduation rates will reflect that. With you, probably it won't make sense that way. Even though if we find them, they are in your cohort, we find them, we'll look for them wherever they graduated. So we separate graduate at your institution or graduate somewhere in Texas. So you'll have that for your students also.
For the discussion tomorrow, I would add probably 6 years or 5.
Right, for you, yeah, it's
for the
6
4
years.
years we have.
Yeah, that's 3 and 4 is for this group. What does it make sense?
Let me clarify what you said. Somebody that came to our college from Austin Community College, somebody that came to our college from Austin Community College and then and went there for one semester and got 6 credit hours that we took. Then they went through the rest of the process at our school and graduated. We wouldn't get credit for their graduation?
Well,
what we're suggesting is we start with first time at your institution.
At your institution. So you'll get credit.
Right.
But for if that student right now, this year, when we calculate, was it for Austin Community College and find them graduating in your institution, Austin Community College will get the credit. But in this case, probably when they start at your institution would be more appropriate. But if they started at your institution and they graduated from Virginia College, you'll still get credit for them.
So we have a number of students who transfer in, career changers, for example. So you're saying, if I understand this correctly, if they transfer in from some other Texas college, private or public, that other college, private or public, would get the credit for their graduation, not our institution.
Well, they are not, when they transfer in the public, the way we calculate, they are not first time in college for that transfer institution, so they are not in their cohort. So they are not sort of penalized. What they get is the number of degree awarded. Then that degree awarded is for the institution that awards the degree. But that student getting the credit to another institution for that student won't penalize you because they are not in your cohort. So
how do you run this for iPads when you're reporting to them? Who's in your cohort? Anybody know?
Because we don't know how you do it.
It is the same, that it would be first time, full time.
Very sensitive.
That it's first time, full time, and that was my comment earlier, was that for schools like ours, we don't have a lot of students that fall in that category that have never been to a college before.
Uh-huh.
Many of our students have been somewhere before.
How many students you have part-time?
Depends your definition of part-time.
Less than 12.
Less than 12 credits.
Yes.
Or a semester.
Or, so the equivalent. Do you have, or most of your students are full-time?
Good. Because what we could consider would be to run one that matches what iPads reports with the not at your institution, just the ones we can tell are first time by the way you reported to us, and see something for them, and then maybe a second measure that would be more unique to yours, which would be the first time at your institution, and then look at them so that because people are used to the graduation rate meaning a certain thing, we could call it something a little bit different, but just run it just for your institutions.
Well, things are a little different, from some of our colleges. You're talking about entering fall cohort. Our students, enroll throughout the year, so there's not a fall or spring, cohort. So we could have students be entering in, all during the year. So
It's the same for community colleges. The students go to them throughout the year. We're still calculating based on the fall. That's another discussion we have with them all the time, but that's the federal definition.
Okay.
So but we can do full-time and part-time if you have part-time students, and it would make sense.
Yeah, they
Sure, we all have
indicate.
part-time
Yeah,
students.
So you
I
want
think that-
for both these groups separate?
Yeah, Gabrielle, just so you know, we don't currently collect, we don't make a distinction of the reports between full-time, part-time.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's just the only thing we have that's related to this is whether they're first time in college or not.
Okay.
So we cannot separate. We'll
So
consider
everybody will go in there.
I think they need to be separated. I think just they need to include the part-time
We'll
students as
include
well.
Because we have to, because we can't do it otherwise. Okay.
Well, okay, except there is one thing, there is a student intent where they say if they're not seeking a degree, a certificate.
Yeah, usually.
There is that,
Uh-huh.
that
What do, for the publics, if the student intent is for personal enrichment, for example, that usually means they take a course or two because they want to learn something, but they don't really intend to get a degree. We remove those students. If they didn't respond, so it's unknown, we give them the benefit of the doubt and include them in the cohort. So we'll do the same thing for you.
For the length of the program, you know, again, for when we account for our students, our population, our graduates, we could have the same program and our part-time students come to school, they attend school longer for the same program. So that language is going to come off as well then, correct?
Well,
because it's
that
not
length,
we're just talking about the number
3 or
of-
4 years. We follow them 3 or 4 years. That is that about, which because not the length of your program.
Okay.
If we follow those students 3 years, 4 years, 6 years, 10 years. So.
Yeah, so for us, usually with the publics, we do a 6-year graduation and persistence rate, but I didn't know what length of time we should think about for you. If we need to run it for a shorter period of time, 3 years or 4 years or something else.
Do you have students who go to your institution, so not for your institutions, do they go for 6 years? Because in publics, they start with developmental ed usually, and sometimes they are 2 years in developmental ed. So that's why we thought maybe 6 years is too much for your institution. The students don't really stay.
Finish in that time.
Okay.
3 to 4 years.
3 and 4.
Yeah.
3
Makes sense.
Yeah.
3, okay. The consensus, 3 years makes sense for graduation and persistence?
So only 3, not 4? I mean,
I think 3 is probably sufficient for what we're trying to get at. here.
okay.
Okay, good. And this is another one that copied, of course, from the community colleges, and where they do have a transfer mission. So these parts may not make sense for you for the 2-year institutions. Do any of your students go on to get bachelors if you're primarily a 2-year school, do you think? Okay, so it would make sense to leave that in there if we can find them somewhere in the state as having graduated with a bachelor's degree, okay?
After having attended our institution?
Yes.
The way we're doing it is they start at your institution, and then for the next 3, 4, 6 years or whatever we decide, we look for them everywhere. And maybe they don't graduate at your institution, or they graduated at your institution and the other institution during that time. 6 years, for example, it's a long time. They can graduate from both. We find them if they did.
And if they do graduate from both, we put them under bachelor's or the highest degree. If they got an associate and a certificate, we give them to the associate line. So
But we don't double count them. So just one count.
And of course, a lot of what we're able to report will depend upon how many years of data we have for your institution. So we've got to have at least, to do a 3-year graduation rate, we have to have at least 3 years of data. So
you may see not applicable in the first report if we don't have, and then, well.
So would you like the 6-year rate left on here? If you think some of your students, Probably the first few years, we won't have anything to report there, but
So you mean the 6 years includes them going on for a bachelor's degree? Yeah. Then I think it should stay on there, yeah.
okay. Okay. And now down to the next one, degrees and certificates.
That's a count, and it's a duplicate count. So if a student got an associate degree and a certificate, it will be counted in both, if you reported them separately to us. I think we have to delete that. The community college students are required to do core, general core, and they are reported as being completers because the law says if they transfer, the core complete has to be accepted by the university. So that's why that is there, but you don't have that, you don't report. So I think we just remove that.
out.
Do you want other disaggregation except, or maybe it's too much, gender, ethnicity, and level? Or it's okay?
What we're finding is that males aren't going on in public ed in the numbers that they used to, so we've started breaking out male, female a lot more because there's a lot more interest in what's happening.
The next group deals with the closing the gaps critical fields and is based on the zip codes that you report to us. And in closing the gaps is very specific what zip codes go in what field.
And you'll find those in the definitions.
So that's what
we left these in because we weren't sure if you would want to use them or not. I mean, there are areas where the state is very concerned that we have enough graduates, so obviously nursing you would want to leave in.
Teaching, does any...
Let's finish with that one. With the STEM, is there any interest in keeping the STEM field awards there?
How would you not want to keep
Yeah,
them in?
no, I think it's good. Okay.
That's all your students.
Okay. So we'll just go ahead then and keep these in, and if we see any things that need to be changed about the way they're phrased, we'll let you know. Then, as Gabriella was going to start on teaching.
Does any of you do that? Because we thought none of you have. So.
I did look through what SBEC reports, and I didn't see anything that I thought looked like your institutions. And that we get this data from SBEC, the State Board for Educator Certification that's part of TEA. And because teachers are, until the downfall of the economy, they were, we were having trouble filling some of the positions. So there was a lot of interest in who was graduating and pursuing teaching. So nobody teaching? Okay, so I'll get rid of that. That's yours, Gabriella.
In graduate status following graduation, what we do, we take the graduates for that year and we look in the following fall to see if they are employed somewhere or if they are still enrolled. Still enrolled in a 4-year degree, or as you can see, we split them if they are still enrolled in a 2-year institution. Employment, we match with the UI wage records. So if we find them employed, they're employed. And if we find them both employed and continuing their education, as you can see, they are separate.
Reports from TWC on this?
No, we are using the UI wage records.
Which is from TWC.
Which is from TWC, but not what you report to TWC as being your employment. We want to be consistent with what we do with the publics.
Well,
to use
from-
the same methodology.
From a consumer standpoint, if I'm looking at this number as a parent or a potential student, and I'm employed, I would want to know where they're employed. Is it in a field or in a related field to what I'm thinking about enrolling in? So if I'm at a gas station, I'm employed, and the record's
Right,
going to
and
pull.
we recognize that's a big hole in the data that we have. So all of you report to TWC?
Yes.
Well, everyone in this room maybe, but
Yeah, there are some that.
There are some that are not.
no. Okay.
No, we don't. We don't.
Yeah.
And
That's a problem because some of the institutions don't. That's the only consistent thing.
No. We just this last fall, we started collecting that information for those that do have to report to TWC with questions.
Yeah.
But there's schools that are exempt. They could put it in there if they wanted to, but it's not a required requirement.
So we won't have that information for everybody.
So where do you get your information from?
From unemployment insurance wage records.
Yeah, and I know what you're saying, Harvey, but if we're going to compare apples to apples, then we should get the same employment statistics that they get. If you go to UT and get a degree in engineering and you're selling, working in a restaurant, they're counted as employed. So if you go to one of our schools and get a degree working in a restaurant, why shouldn't it be apples to apples? I know it doesn't do like Michael's talking about in field, not a field, but what are we trying to do here?
Yeah, well, one thing we could do would be to leave this measure as it is, because it will be comparable to the public's, and create another measure that would use some of the information that you report to us and to TWC on the enrollment status. Because the other thing that's a concern always to me with what we get from TWC is it's only for employers that have 25 or more employees. Things like nursing, if you're working in a doctor's office, you could be smaller than that. And so there are some people who could be employed in the field that we won't ever find in the UI wage records.
This is a real waste to compile all that for TWC. It's so complete, not for you not to use.
Well, we'll get it. I mean, we just started this year. So what we can do is create that extra measure for just those institutions. But some institutions will have and some institutions won't have. And probably because what we do for all these measures, we compile the institution and the group. So you can always have the group. I'm not sure if we don't have all institutions in the group reporting on that, if we'll run the group, but it will be by institution.
I guess I think for all nursing career schools.
For some reason, I'm not worried that nurses will find jobs as waiters. I think your students probably are nurses.
So are we able to report the information? I'm sorry, is TWC and THECB able to communicate and share that information? I thought there was an issue with that.
The direct match will do it. And what you report to TWC, we created an item on your report to us where you report whatever you report to TWC.
But you are able to share that information now? Michael, do you know?
But we are not sharing, you report it to us.
I'll show you where you report it, just one second.
This makes sense. You report it on our report.
The latest status of that, we can share aggregate information. We compile, and we're about to show what we did this year, because not everybody reported, but we can compile just like we do for the other statistics that on that form 7, what is it?
D.
We can give them the data, we can compile that data, but at this point, we can't share the 72D, which is the actual.
That's by student.
Information.
But we are talking about aggregate, so we'll put it on the internet.
Well, I think too that people need to understand there's TWC, UI, wage matching, and then there's the career school program. And so we're talking two different aspects of TWC here. And they're using it for different purposes, so.
We probably, I'm wondering, Janet and Gabriella, if we were to show the UI wage record data, we should put a note in there to hear that those employment numbers are different potentially.
Yeah,
It will be in the definition. In the definition, it's very clear how we do it. If we create a second measure using what you reported on this item, which matches what you report to TWC for the ones who report to TWC, then we'll specify that in the definition.
Well, the dates will be different.
I'm sorry?
We report to these guys, TWC, November 30th.
You report this to us.
Okay,
It's the same
okay.
thing.
I'm getting iPads in my head again.
So, whatever you report to TWC, you're supposed to report on this item to us. But we just started this past December, so we cannot go back.
So you see,
run that.
the first one there says complete or employed in job related to their training, and actually placed in the job by your institution. I think that's what you've been reporting to TWC.
The employment and placement,
Yeah.
So
What is this that you have up there now?
that's the Career Schools Reporting
Okay, so
Manual.
the TWC.
So that's what you
Okay.
report to us. This is what you sent to us. And so we'll know this by student based on what you report to us. So we don't have this information for the publics, but we could create a separate measure for you that would actually use this because we have more information.
Yeah,
So
but
if we create one with, I'm sorry.
and it's okay. I was going to say to Tom, you had an excellent point. I mean, if we do that and we break it out, it's not going to be apples to apples to the publics because it's just pulling the
Well,
tax records.
that's the reason to keep the first one, which will be apples to apples, and then this one,
Okay,
which
so it'd
will.
be in addition to.
In addition. But
that
which
makes
elements
sense.
do you want? If we are to create, which elements of that do you want?
Well, at the end of the day, when they enroll, they sign for our approved rates. But before then, I want to avoid confusion if we can, And if they see two rates, they see one rate, then it's different.
Well, we
That's
could
all.
call this a program enrollment rate or some, we try to make sure that the names we call things are significantly different so that they won't be confused.
And the other thing is we have rates, like you just said, by program. We don't have an institutional rate for the Workforce Commission.
We'll calculate your institutional rate because you report to us and we'll do it by we'll
Okay, so we'll be
aggregate by institution. What you'll have, I sent an email out some time ago about the follow-up report, the exit cohort report that we did for your institutions, we created for your institute. Cliff, do we have that exit report up? I know we have a link because I sent it to you. I don't know if I can find it without going through, I don't know if the link is there that we can find it. The exit cohort for them? Anyway, that report, if you saw it when I sent the link.
Is it like the one for the public?
Yes.
Should I?
Just pull it up. You'll get what you get in that report. That's pretty much what you get.
Automated.
Yes, and then exit report. Just pick one.
It's not in the drop-down list.
Yes,
But there is a.
but you'll have the same thing. I mean, it's created. It's just not in the drop down. But you'll have it for your every institution there.
I'm inclined to leave it apples to apples with?
No, we already created this report. It's just that IT didn't put the link.
I guess what I'm saying is, ultimately, they will hear what my sonography program's placement rate is.
Yes.
And if it's my highest rated program, a highest placed program, by definition, it will be higher than what is stated on the aggregated, averaged from your website. And I guess what I'm saying is I'd rather it be just.
Well, for example, this particular report, the last page is by program, by zip code. So it will show up, but again, the way we match it with UI wage records. And it shows up the employment rate and the wages for that program. So you have both in that one.
What prevents us from getting this information from the public schools?
Nothing. It's right there.
I mean, the more detailed information, jobs are directly related to their career and so on.
So what do you mean more detail?
Well, to get apples to apples, why shouldn't we ask that information from the public schools?
Well, that's what we discussed.
We don't ask it for them because they're so big. They don't have any idea what's happened to most of their students.
They cannot. What we do with them, we match with both employment and enrollment, and the graduates that we don't find everywhere, we send those names back to the institutions and ask them, can you find out about them? We give them about 6 weeks. If they follow them up, they respond. If they respond, giving us information, fine. If not, but quite frankly, we cannot really send back 10,000 students and say, follow them up, call each one of them, because it's not doable.
Oh, I think you should.
Well, this is about accountability, right?
Yeah. But for technical students, we do. I can't get it to open. I think there must be something the matter with our website.
What about that down? See, it is, you have the Adobe, the PDF.
I know, there's nothing there. I had to go open it, and it still doesn't have anything.
I'm not gonna.
Anyway,
You'll have your institutions in the drop-down. Cliff is working on that. It's run, so the information is there. And some of you emailed me, I sent the link for the state, and some of you sent me email, and I sent back that particular institution. So.
okay, we'll create something with that.
So you want the additional measure or not?
No, I don't believe we wanted an additional measure at this time.
Okay.
Excellence.
Yeah, excellence is one we always have trouble figuring out how can you really measure this. And of course, ideally, if we had some way of measuring student learning over time, that would be something we could report, but we don't have anything like that. So one of the things we do for the two-year institutions is do the pass rate on programs where students are required to take an exam, and to be listed here, they have to have, and unlike what we see here, they're supposed to have a 90% pass rate for each of the past 3 years in order to be considered an excellent program.
So not an average for each year. So we get different lists every year, depending on that.
Just an editorial thing, it's not called the Board of Nurse Examiners at all anymore, it's Board of Nursing.
Yeah, this was put in by an institution. They typed this in because we couldn't calculate it until now, and so it's, I could change it now, but it doesn't have any meaning for us. Somebody typed it in out there at an institution, and I went and grabbed their
And
page.
probably will ask you to enter your programs that fit that definition. That's what.
No, that's a possibility.
Because we don't know your licensure pass rate.
Do most of you have?
We don't.
We don't get that. We have tried. Huh?
Post it online,
We hear from our institutions that sometimes people can take it at other places and the other school gets credit if that's where they took it, and I don't know. We just let them put in the results. And we now have a licensure measure report that we collect.
And they report to us for each of their programs, but it's a separate report, not a CBM. Probably you don't want to do that.
Your definition indicates we can use what we are currently using for gainful employment.
Well, that was a question I had.
That's another measure for.
I wondered if any of the things you're posting for gainful employment would be something you would be interested in, sharing as an excellence indicator. Just trying to think outside of what we have for the community.
And it will be links to your website where you put that information. It won't be something, you just give us links.
And in that case, what would have to happen would be when we open this system up for you to look at and make comments on the results that are there, you would at that point in time get a chance to enter information into certain elements here where we're depending upon you to put in the information. So you'd put your link in there. If, we're certainly open to comments on what might be considered excellence for your institutions. And we're just putting up as suggestions only things we knew that maybe would work.
The measure with the 3 years pass rate over 90%, community colleges wanted that because they said if the pass rate is over 90% each year for 3 years, that can be considered an excellent program.
So why are they on there at 85 and 80%?
I said whoever put this in was putting it incorrectly.
How important is this for all of us even to have anything like this on there? I mean, for you guys, it might be. If you have a
No,
90%
for you it will be other type of, for your programs, any type of certification or that pertains to your program. No, I mean,
it's strictly a question for you because we don't know.
I'm saying, how many people even have licenses that
We do for our interior design department, CIDQ, CETA accreditation. But as I'm understanding this is optional, correct?
No, it's not optional for the institutions, but they're supposed to put in only ones that meet the criteria, and they're obviously.
That's the definition. Because it requires some of ours, some of ours are like that, and some are. It's nice to have the certification, but others you can't work unless you got it. So.
Of course, there's the distinction between certifications and licensing. I mean, they're two different things. So in licensing, you're going to have your license in order to work in your field of study. Mm-hmm. So are we talking about including both?
Whatever you want. They have a report for us because the Perkins requirement that goes from Perkins says licensure or certification. So because of that requirement where we include those certifications, they report both to us. This particular one refers only to licensures, but we can make it licenses or certifications. I mean, it's really something that represents you and should include as many of the institutions as possible because I agree, not many have licensures.
This is self-reporting, is that correct?
Yes.
So you could leave it on there, if we don't have anything to report, we just leave it blank.
Right.
So I say just leave it on there and use it as you see fit for your institution.
And basically each measure in accountability system has a box for explanation. So if you don't have any, you'll just put in your box, our institution doesn't have any program that needs licensure or something like that, because in the end you want to explain that you didn't enter anything because you have no program with over 92% pass rate, or you don't have programs that have licensure. You want to explain that, or in those boxes for each measure, maybe you have something to say to explain what your data shows.
I can't say this for everyone here, but we're a prometric test center at our school. We have one, but we don't always get information on those individuals that have tested and passed. But on licensing, we do. That's a given. But I think it'd be very difficult to get accurate information on certifications. So
Again, you
I
don't
understand.
have to include that. We are
yeah.
discussing it.
Yeah.
So if you want, we need something for excellence, and usually licensure is considered,
I think licensing should remain on there, personally.
Okay. Any other ideas on things we could do that would indicate the excellence of your programs or your overall institution?
What do the public schools have?
The two-year institutions have, well, pretty much.
The legislature wants, that's part of this bill to list.
And it's because Perkins legislation requires licensure and certification, and they have another measure. I don't think it's in IE, right? The licensure pass rate, the overall.
We don't report that anymore because it was so inaccurate.
But they have to report to LBB licensure pass rate for all their programs together. So that's somewhere there too. But you don't have to report that to LBB. So we.
As a measure of excellence for some of our institutions, placement and starting salary statistics, which I know is hard to hold the public accountable for that.
Okay, we can put the starting salaries that we find in UI wage records, but then it's a whole discussion. What is an excellent salary for a certain?
I'm just saying for our own institutions, that's how we kind of measure.
Okay.
Employment rates, maybe not starting salaries, because there is so much.
There it is. Pass rate on national, state and national exams.
See, like this contextual measure, certification and licensure, does the LBB measure that it's a licensure pass rate that combines all the programs that they
Doesn't
have.
make any sense to us, but
But that's an LBB measure, and they have to report it to them. You don't.
You can leave licensure there for those schools.
and because we didn't really have anything very significant for the institutions, we asked them to identify and explain a little bit about some of their programs they thought were excellent programs.
So any ideas that you have for something that we can put in excellence for you?
Just a suggestion. We had talked about employment and field earlier. Would this be a case where we might want to set a benchmark and use that? Just a suggestion, open for discussion.
I think
Only if you're going to have the public do the same thing. And it doesn't sound like you don't have that. So I think it would be setting us up for failure and comparing against public if we did that.
I don't know that we wanted the state to set a benchmark for placement.
That would be you guys setting.
Right. For that, it will be you and your group and all your institutions together. So it will be pretty much comparing you with yourselves, because the publics won't have that. And I don't think anybody will compare you with the publics on a measure that doesn't exist for them. You have the common measures of the follow-up, the one we discussed earlier, and that may be comparable. Somebody may compare you with that, but nobody will compare you with something that they don't have at all.
Our recommendation would be hold the public's account.
Yeah, exactly.
That's another discussion.
Couldn't resist.
So if you want to use what you report in the field, then we can use.
I know that all of us want the public schools to be held accountable, but it was a suggestion. We don't necessarily have to place a benchmark, but we're trying to make suggestions for a comparison amongst ourselves. And I know that we haven't got what we wanted, but let's just think outside the box.
Yeah, that's the reason I had originally suggested something from the gainful employment information, because that's kind of what they're doing with that measure, is seeing how successful you are for your students.
And they are required to publish the same information, but just for their certificates program.
The publics.
The publics. So at least for the certificates, you can have a comparison if you have links there. We don't ask them to give us the links.
Speaking from my perspective, I think, when we sit down with students, we put the PS005 in front of them. It has our previous year's completion, employment, placement rates. It's all right there, the past 2 years. And so obviously that's a different organization and a different understanding from the public's perspective, college versus trade school, that whole thing. But to me, if it were just up to me, I'd like to be able to say, okay, here's a link to all of our stuff that takes it out of what University of Texas does or whatever and puts us in what ultimately is where the rubber meets the road, where they sign on the dotted line to go to school there. And then it would be, from my perspective, an apples to apples against other schools licensed by the TWC. And maybe that's wishful thinking, but...
And is that what you're going to be putting in your gainful employment links?
In some measure, yeah. I mean, there's more to gainful employment. I'm not the expert on it, but there's some.
I'm trying to think how we could best capture that to put the information. It's going to have to be something you guys put in. And if somebody would like to volunteer to come up with a template of what the measure should look like, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I talk about the programs that I think in my mind are doing well, that I think are excellent programs, I look at how the placement rates are. If they're struggling, okay, look at that too. But again, I'm all for level playing field. I don't know what the answer is there, like no one else here does. But
I don't think you should think of every measure to be comparable with the publics, because there are some things that you should have for yourself.
Which is kind of why I was thinking the link to the TWC would kind of put it on in our universe, if you will. Again, I know some folks are, exempt or whatever, and this doesn't apply to them, but it applies to me.
Okay.
Is there a link that we can put, Michael?
It takes you to the search page.
How can we do?
We can go. You can put a link to the to our search page for all of the schools.
Okay. Does that sound like a good suggestion to everybody?
Just pull up the name.
And obviously that wouldn't help those that
well.
that doesn't apply, that aren't TWC licensed. Because to me that also eliminates confusion. It's like, okay, it's the same exact.
Okay. I will.
So that's in addition to the licensure measure? That's what I'm hearing?
Well,
that a link that is in addition to the licensure measure? Or, I'm sorry?
I think that information will already be included when they go to that link.
They'll go to the link and it'll bring up a search page.
No, what I'm asking is, we discussed that licensure pass rate. Is this link that we discuss now in addition to that, or instead of that?
Well, for us, it would be in addition because...
In addition. Okay.
Licensure is not part of
Exactly.
TWC.
Okay.
One thing about having licensure is for those schools that are exempt, they would still have something else that they could show beyond the employment.
Okay, now we're going to move on to institutional efficiency and effectiveness. And most of the data here is going to come, all probably,
of it.
from iPads. So we've gone out to iPads and checked what they had and tried to pick out the parts that were somewhat comparable to what we have for the two-year institutions.
Because they report to us directly, so for them, the definitions reflect exactly what they report to us. So we had to tweak a little bit the definitions based on what is reported in iPads. But
Again, this is something that you would pull from those
Yes.
already
Yes.
provided iPads.
Yes.
Additional information.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. Search page.
Now, I want to give you some heads up. There are some blanks in iPads that
Blanks,
institutions
blanks.
did not
Institutions we haven't
report.
reported. An awful lot of them, really.
So if you don't report to iPads, you won't have anything here. And there are institutions who didn't. And it seems consistent. I looked several years back, and there are institutions that consistently don't report. So, in iPads, if you get financial aid, you are required to report.
Well, some schools, the way iPads is structured, finances may only be reported to the main campus and not to branch campuses. So you're looking at just
No. What I'm talking about, what was reported under a branch campus in Texas.
Yeah,
If
and
it's just one, so I'm not talking about the ones who were a bigger campus and they didn't report anything for Texas. I'm talking about that show up as a Texas institution. So, just to give you some heads up on that. I don't know how. And any questions about these measures? He is our resource.
This is Paul Turcott. He works in our finance section.
So he knows definitions of finances and what the publics report and what may be the difference between what they report and the definitions. The definitions here are basically copied from iPads, the way they are there.
Okay. So any comments on what's suggested to be reported here?
I do. I guess I do because
Yes.
I know I contacted Fred on this too. This is the area that I'm just concerned why this is why we're having to post this information publicly. And this is information that we've certainly provided in our iPads reporting.
And
Information.
iPads
some
is
of this-
public,
It's
and
public.
that's where we get it, is just from the regular
but now this is going to be
website.
broken down by institution, though, correct?
In iPads is by institution.
Mm-hmm.
It's available by institution. Everything is public. If it's in iPad, it's public by institution.
Mm-hmm.
If you go in College Navigator, it's right there.
By school.
By
Yeah.
school. Unless you don't report it. That's another issue.
Report it. That's not that's not the question.
And the reason that the Department of Ed created the College Navigator was to make all this kinds of information available so students could compare.
We're still getting comments, people not being able to hear, so.
Okay.
Except that microphone.
Yeah.
So we were trying to come up, for example, academic and institutional support and student services. It's not quite like the public's report, but that's how you report in iPads under this category. Theirs is a little bit more divided.
I don't think that matters.
So it's not what we were trying to do is find some financials that make sense for your institution. So we are asking for your opinion if that may show some of your activities and where, I don't know, where you put your money, where you get your money from, or whatever. So
Anybody have any comments? I know under the item 17 over there for total revenues, we have tuition and fees, then we really weren't sure about what other categories would make sense.
For example, we put,
Well, for a number of our institutions, our revenue sources comes from tuitions and fees, and in some cases, housing. But that's pretty much it.
I mean,
There are some miscellaneous, revenue sources. So we receive no, tax.
Right. That's why we didn't put any federal appropriation or state appropriations. I mean,
Why would we put number
Maybe we should.
16?
Put another, put 0.
Why would we put number 16?
well, I think what we were thinking is that maybe you'd like to show how much of your how much you spend for instruction compared with your whole that would be something you spend for the student. Right now I cannot tell you. I think we have a similar measure for the publics. Or it will be a percent. I mean, if you want that, again. I'm sorry?
No.
Are we on instructions still? Are we on?
Yeah, we're on
16.
expenses and revenues, right here with the, yeah.
Are we on 17 or 16?
Either one.
Either one.
I'll have to go back. What is institutional funds?
Yeah, that's, you see those in yellow because I was just cutting and pasting. But core revenues here are tuition and fees, sales and services of educational activities, and other core revenue. Those are the three categories that I see in the iPads.
Yeah. So what we'll put there as sources of revenue is whatever is in iPads. Whatever you report under those categories in iPads.
Well, I would just pull the iPads information.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
what we
that's what we'll do.
Yeah.
It's already public information.
Yes. I mean, we are not asking for you to report anything to us. What we are asking you is if those measures make sense for your institutions. In a way, I'm asking you, well, not really if you want them there, I guess. I think we need to put some financials there and
What statute require?
as close as possible to the publics, and the publics have them.
As close as possible to the public.
But how much does it require? I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't. But this is something that's available out there publicly already, that it's easy for us to pull, and it would be some information for the public and for legislators who are looking at your institutions, just out of curiosity. But it's not anything that's not already available. I just go out to the iPads data center and you can get any of this.
And for the resume, I think we have as measures there. Again, they mention the publics.
When you mention the public schools, it includes the private schools, right?
No, they do their own statistical report. So we get information from what we call independent schools. Is that what you mean? But we don't have an accountability system for them. We've never been required. Yeah, we've never been required, and it was originally in this law, it was very vague, and we couldn't tell from what was written who it applied to, and then it got clarified during the session, and the independent institutions proved, at least satisfactorily to the legislators, that their statistical report does what accountability does. So they are not required to be part of accountability.
32 instructors.
yeah, the overall picture on this accountability, it seems like we kind of go back and forth. Sometimes it's for basis of comparison between institutions. That doesn't seem like that's an accountability issue to me. It seems like, are our students graduating? Are they passing their rates? That's an accountability thing. When it comes to something financial, it's are the students able to pay back their loans? It's a default rate. It's not how much revenue we're bringing in. Or what percent we're spending on teacher salaries, because facilities mean a lot in the quality education as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to stay on what the whole purpose behind this was. It's accountability. And that's where I'm struggling sometimes on how much information we should be giving out. I want to stay with the purpose of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm. I think on your tuition and fees, I think for sure that would be an element that the legislators would expect to see. But I don't know that we have to do the expenses and revenues. And the other thing we could do would be just put a link to iPads.
But how does revenue show accountability?
Well, this is institutional efficiency and effectiveness. For the publics, when you see how much they get from appropriations and things like that, and how much of that is spent per student, those are measures of efficiency, I believe. But for you, you don't have those same things. So we're trying to make this as complete as possible so that the legislators won't come back and say to us, as they have many other times on other projects, we didn't see this in there and we want it in there, and so we're going to say exactly what we want you to have. That's an issue that's happened many, many times.
Well, what's important to them when it comes to financial? What's important to them? What do they want to look at?
Yeah, I don't know.
Because we can't make that decision without knowing that.
Yeah, and that's always an issue.
And to me, I would think that their big thing would be default rates. Are students paying back their loans?
If you have default rates that are published out there somewhere, that you would
we all know
like
our
to,
default rates.
Okay.
We can put that, but I guess you either enter yourselves or tell us how to get it. We don't know your default rate.
Yeah, well,
and I didn't see it in iPads to just go and get them. So you are willing to enter those? It's fine with that.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, I don't see where the financial information really says accountability to me. That's where I'm struggling.
Well, for the public, is how efficiently they use the funds they get. And for example, one that is not here because we didn't think it's important from your point of view, they have the administrative cost rate, which they are supposed to cut down from year to year. They're not supposed to use so much money for the administrative function. Mm-hmm. And the state and the LBB is interested in that. Because you don't get money from the state, we thought maybe it doesn't matter how much money you spend for your administration of your business. That's why we put the instruction. Maybe it will be interesting and to show or for the effectiveness and so forth how much money you spend from the whole money you spend on instruction. So we don't know. That's why we discuss it here.
So if you have high instructional salaries and you have a very low perseverance rate, what does that say?
Paying too much.
Yeah.
In general, it's considered that if you spend for instruction, you spend for the student, versus you spend for administration. It's not quite directly related to instruction.
And the instructional expenses include the investment back into things like technology and things that it takes to deliver that instruction, not just faculty salaries, but facilities, instructional investments.
Mm-hmm. And many things in the accountability system are not kind of standalone. You look at 3 or 4 things and then see if there's some kind of correlation, something that's of interest.
And eventually, how does this information being used? Once we're held accountable, how is it being used at that point?
Well, for you guys, I can't say how it will be used. I know for public institutions, there are some boards of regents that actually look through the accountability system, pick out all the measures that they find really significant, and then rate their president based on how they're doing. There are a number of community colleges that also do the same thing, when they compare themselves with other institutions. So it's all the parts of it are used for the publics. Now for you, of course, we don't have any idea at this point. We're just trying to come up with something that we think meets what the legislature is expecting to see when we put this out. Who knows?
As a history with the resumes, the first thing we heard, you need to create something. And we created something. Janet worked extensively of creating and including the measures we thought are important. The next thing we knew, all of them were listed. This is what we want. And not all of them were what we suggested. So we try to avoid being told this is what you should include. Because we have control now. Next time, we may not have a control.
Well, if we want to keep up with, providing information that's similar to the public's, if the publics then are listing their local tax revenue and state funding, then we can put that on there because they're going to show a large number and we're going to show zero.
Do you want to see what the public's, I guess we can open that one, report as measures for this financial, this area? As I said, a little bit, it would be different because they have a report directly to us with certain definitions. This will be from iPad. So. So that's what we have for them.
Oh, I mean, we can go down there more. There's more
Right.
at the bottom.
I mean, I think we.
Losing my.
I think you can go with that. So what we have is the tuition and fees for 30 hours. For you is whatever you report for annual tuition, because 30 hours for them is considered full-time 1 year. Institutional support is a percent.
I'm going to go to. STC.
See, administrative expenses, it's important for them, for legislators, how much you spend on administration. We didn't think it's important for you. But if you want it, and the idea for this is you should improve. See, the accountability system was created so you can improve yourself. But how can you, then it was the discussion how we compare ourselves versus our group or others like us. So you cannot really stop the comparison, even if it's not the intention.
I'm concerned about how legislature would look at the information. I mean, if you can run a great school and have high graduation rates, have high licensure rates and so on, but if they see we're making a lot of profit, they can look at that and think something negative about the school. And so I'm concerned about how they're going to use that information.
And that goes back to my earlier question at the beginning of the session. How is this information going to be disseminated and used?
Well, disseminated, it'll be on the website. Used is a matter for, yeah.
We cannot control that one.
When you're looking at the groupings, there's a number of institutions in this room, and I know tomorrow, that are part of a larger entity where there's several institutions represented by a parent company, which to break it out into these groupings might not be that comparable.
As I said when we started, almost everybody on those lists, I didn't put an asterisk on anything, for the ones that I didn't find on iPads reported specifically for Texas. So I assume that if ITT Arlington publishes in iPads the tuition for that particular location, that's the tuition they charge in Arlington, even though they have ITT in Florida. I assume that what they report is specific for Arlington or Dallas or whatever. If it's a parent company that don't split it out, I wanted to put it on the table. How do you want to proceed for the institutions who don't report separately in iPads? There are not so many. But that I don't plan to get that information that the parent company reports total for all their locations throughout the country. I don't think it's fair. But we need to discuss what we do with those.
Specific to Texas
Yes.
in this particular reporting.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, since we're almost out of time and I would like to have us get through everything we need to, we'll discuss this more internally and get back to you on what we think, our proposal for whether we think we need anything in this category. But I do believe that the tuition and fees, the legislature for sure is going to want to see that.
Yeah, just to reflect on the big picture here, I want to refer back to something Larry said earlier, and that's about how we emphasize things with regards to placement and putting students in careers that are in their career field. And I think that's where we have a big edge over the community colleges in the public sector, is that we do a better job of that. And that's not reflected in anything that's coming out here, because you're not telling that information for the public schools. So when they just take a look at profits and they're not taking a look at where they're placing their students, I think it's misrepresenting our sector.
It's
Okay. Did everybody agree to the measure about the default rate on student loans? Is that?
Don't think so.
No.
That was just put on the table.
Yeah.
No.
That's what, okay, so that's what I wanted to make sure.
That was an accountability thing. That's why I brought that
It
up.
is accountability. I
Yeah.
agree with you completely.
I
It
think
is.
we finished with Frank's question about the tuition and fees and how they were charged. You went to the location, we didn't see any charges.
Oh,
Public institutions.
okay.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, there are a couple of, it's not just like one page and all these things, but here you see what we report on expenditures and appropriations for the publics. And this is coming from iPads too, because we're comparing it with their out-of-state peers in that case. I don't know where it went.
But their fees and
Okay.
tuition and fees has to be coming from, some from the students, and some from the state funding and all that, correct?
No, the tuition and fees is what the student is charged. The appropriations from the state is separate.
And that's not shown on here.
Well, hold on.
Yes, there is a measure that says appropriations.
Well, that, I just was.
36, I think, does.
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
Appropriated
So there are
funds
two
for
different
FTE
things where you show how much they got from the state and how much the student pays. And the type of fees that are included are usually part of the IPADS definitions, and that's why here is from IPADS, because what they report to the state is a little bit different, so it may be slightly
But what
different.
Frank was asking, if it's not unreasonable, then why wouldn't we put a category under our schools as appropriations and have zero?
Yeah, I mean, you could.
We can.
But if you don't want anything on expenses and revenues, then we wouldn't. So, well, I mean, Phil's certainly suggesting that we don't have much of anything under expenses and revenues.
I'm just worried about how they're going to interpret that information when they see expenses subtracted from revenue. They're going to see a big profit, and how they're going to look at that.
And they won't have top of mind the fact that we have a big zero in appropriations and don't have, $15 billion in an endowment and so on and so forth. But
And they don't see an apples-to-apples placement statistic either.
I mean, we're all trying to do legislative intent. I mean, if I'm a legislator and I was part of this, I don't know that I care how much a school makes in terms of top-line revenue. Might I care about how much they're spending on the educational stuff? I don't know, maybe. But is that the best measure of accountability, and is it going to be something that, is apples to apples?
What measure that has to do with money? Because definitely it won't look very good if you don't put anything. I mean, we all agree to that.
No, I think further discussion.
This is a topic that we need to go back and have more input from our.
So come up with something that reflects what you do, and I mean, really.
Okay, so tuition and fees, everybody okay with that? I think that's something that for sure would be expected.
But we also wanted, that's the one we were saying, why would we not put appropriations under there and say zero?
Zero.
I think we can put it, but the truth is, I think everybody knows that you get zero.
Well, I don't think they.
Well, you're asking if we want it on there, and we say we do.
But they would be
So-
reminded if they saw this.
Okay.
Yeah.
List it that way.
They don't.
It's a
And
reminder.
actually,
They don't care.
No, they don't.
when I looked at the data in iPads, there were categories there that it says state appropriation, federal appropriations, And some of you had some numbers there. I mean, I don't know if, but I expected everybody to be zero, but not everybody was zero.
Okay.
You might have some WIA funds or something like that in there.
I didn't know.
Let's concentrate real quickly, if we can, on the tuition and fees. We do for publics for 30 semester credit hours. Should we we'll just choose whatever you are
Annual,
reporting
in iPad,
iPads.
it's annual.
Okay.
That's how it's called, annual.
Okay. And how about on faculty? Do you want to report on your faculty?
That's another of the public measures.
And how is it reported on the public's on faculty?
The same way, the part-time, full-time by ethnicity and gender. And I can find that in iPads.
Yes.
And for the 4 years, it's by rank, but I know you have sometimes no rank, so we'll add that category.
You want to add the rank?
No rank.
No rank.
No rank.
Because there are institutions that don't have academic ranks for their faculty.
I have a question. I have a question regarding the tuition and fees.
Yes.
Are we to break everything down by program?
No.
Is this going to be an
You
average?
don't have to do anything. It's,
when this comes about. I mean, we agreed we're going to report on this, but I guess my.
we'll take it from iPad, and in iPad it's not by program. It's annual fee that you reported for your institution. Now, what that means in terms of different program, you calculate an average to report to iPads? I don't know.
I see.
But it's for your institution, because in publics, the credit hour is credit hours. Now, there may be more or less fees depending on the program or so, but for publics, it's more even. I don't know. I think we had a discussion with TWC that the tuition and fees may be different by programs, but in iPad, we'll take it from iPad, and that won't be by program.
On the 30 semester credit hours charge, does the public institution include their appropriations or only the fees and
No,
tuitions they get from the individual?
It's what the students
Student
are paying.
base.
Yeah, so it's not an apples to apples comparison. That's the problem that we have with that.
I think that's the problem you have nationally with the whole discussion.
Right.
In the end, the apple to apple is what the student pays issue. Why they pay it, it's...
No, it's what the cost is, not what the student pays, it's what the total cost, taxes and everything else that helps them go to community colleges versus coming to us. Because we just did a comparison before I came over here of one organization, and it came up to $30,000, $31,000 a year by the time you put all the appropriations and tuition and fees into the same bucket, and then divided it by the number of students, there was like a $300 and something million for 10,000 to 12,000 students, which made it $31,000 in real costs for the state, all of us taxpayers and everything else for that student to go to school, which is much higher than everybody here probably.
I think we have a measure, I'm not sure if it's not for the 4 years, when we have some kind of cost per FTE student. And that's basically the whole cost that would include the appropriate, I mean, everything that you
Yeah, well,
the expense.
Where is it on that?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Tom, you very well concisely pointed out why the expenses and revenues are on there. That's the best way to get to the cost. And profit being shown or not, it's very useful for people when they go out to the website to see that a profit-going institution can manage to instruct at a certain cost, whereas public institutions might instruct at a different cost. So that's where that data, it may be a double-edged sword, but it's very useful to put it out there to show that full picture, because tuition fees won't show the full picture.
And you can see here, this is on the university side, appropriated funds per FTE student.
And we have, if you go, I think, further down, operating expenses per FTE student. So we have some per FTE student that gets to how much a student costs and how much you spend for the student. So probably this one would be, it should cost, if your study is correct, it should cost the same, right? It will be close to. I mean, but,
It appears to, I don't know.
so that's why maybe you want to put there more than just tuition and fees, some of the costs you have that it's comparable.
Well, I think tomorrow you'll have, added discussion on this from the four-year institutions and give us an opportunity to have discussions with those that we feel we should have discussions with.
Well, the question on the four-year institutions, are you gonna have a total, are you gonna go back through this whole thing again? And all
Yeah,
change?
and theirs is slightly different because we're basing it on what we do for the universities instead of what we do for the community colleges. But if we could, real quickly, just look at the online resume.
So,
We're going to
before
have
we
to
go
do
there,
this. Okay.
We'll keep those two measures for faculty and faculty-student ratio. So both of them, you're okay with them?
Most of these things in here we have talked about already, and so we have your opinions on them already. You see there is a funding box here, Phil. So I don't know if you have concerns about that. I'm sure you do. The funding, bottom right-hand corner. The only things that are on here that we haven't really discussed are this off-campus room and board and other costs. That, once again, we'll get from iPads, so we assume that will be okay. Everything else, we've just tried to mirror what we do for, as we're required by statute, what we do for the two-year institutions.
So this is your recommendation on how the resume would actually look?
This is
how
just
the online resume would actually...
This is a mock-up, yeah. I heard that we reported that the online resume wasn't working over there, so we can go back and see if it is now. And do you have any questions about the items that are on the online resume?
Got to create another institute type.
Yeah, that's what we would have, would be a type, another type on there. It would say career colleges and schools. Doesn't look very promising.
Oh, no.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So that's what it looks like now. It's, this is just a mock-up I do in Excel, but,
It'll look like this for
yeah,
you.
and we're actually told under the heading enrollment, under the heading cost, all those things. So it's very prescriptive. And we've tried to just exactly mirror what the statute says we have to do.
And one page.
And
That's
one
it, one page.
Where's the funding for them?
Yeah.
Costs.
No,
Well,
that's
that's,
the cost of
that's a
going.
cost to
Yeah.
student. So we could leave it off for you.
Yeah.
Okay?
That would be removed?
Yeah.
But then we have to put some cost, because...
No, I mean, we've got costs up here.
Where?
It's the same.
Oh, yeah.
Let me,
We're eliminating funding?
Yeah, it sounds like we get rid of funding.
Okay. Not even tuition fees.
Tuition and fees,
that's part of cost.
I have a question on the student success, because we've talked about the graduation rates. Oh, forgive me.
no, because right now, the tuition and fees is under cost in the mock-up.
I guess got in both places, huh?
No, one of them's by revenues and one of them's by, just one second,
Here, tuition and fees is how much money the institution gets, not how, so, okay.
All right.
Let me show you.
Okay.
See, the tuition and fees.
we have, just to let you know, Larry, we have
15,000 or something.
on the university side, we have a funding category that we're supposed to do, and it is, if we went to the four-year resume, you'd see a funding information there. But it's not required for the two-year institutions, so. at least,
Assume that.
uh-huh. Okay, yes, sorry.
Okay, just on the student success, what we've been talking about here, one of the things we wanted elaborated on was going to be not only the graduation rate, but also the placement rate. Or are we going to add this under student success?
It's supposed to be this one with the percent of graduates employed or enrolled.
Okay.
But if you do a new,
Is that-
if
is
we
that
do
link-
a
is
new
that where it's
placement
gonna be
measure, we
under-
could add a measure for you, and that's quite possible that the legislature would see it and think, hey, that's a good measure, let's do it for the 2 years as well, so.
This one here is not the link, it's the one that will calculate like for the public. That is measure, measure 13 in here. That's what it is.
I think we all would like the placement added.
So.
Well,
It is a placement. This-
It is a placement, but it's not the specific placement by program that you guys were saying you'd like. And I'm still interested in trying to find somebody who would like to mock up what that might look like.
We talked about the link, at least for schools that are TWC
But this is,
licensed.
I want to
if
caution you,
If the
though.
legislative, consumer protection, if that's the goal, that's where you want to go.
Well, what I want to caution you, at least here, you'll have two placement rates on the same page.
No, we'll have a link to the TWC.
Or, because here you'll have employed, 80%, and then you have employed in the field more or less than that. And then it may be confusing when they will see employed two different
We just
rates.
want one for the institution,
Just-
right? We don't want it by program on here.
No.
It's a simple, quick look at
It will be by institution, not by program.
But we could put a,
I
I mean,
just
we
want to
could
know how that's
add,
calculated. That's all.
we could put a, as we discussed
Done
for
off
the,
of the workman, it's done off unemployment at UIC. Right?
Okay,
That's
just
how you do the
employment
employment.
The employment is UI wage records and.
An apples to apples thing.
Okay, fine. That's fine.
okay, so you don't
That's
want a
what is
program
here.
placement rate link on here now? You do? You don't? Some of you do, some of you don't? Which is what we discussed adding to the
To
accountability.
excellence. What is the opinion? Do you want it on the resume?
Link to TWC.
It will be in accountability system.
For me, or
The
for me,
discussion
yeah.
is here.
I don't know what I want to say.
One advantage of having it there is it shows that we're working with TWC on,
Yeah.
on making this information available. So, and if it's over there, I think,
That would be different for the 4 years.
We'll see tomorrow.
yeah.
Just to clarify, the placement rate as far as we're concerned is only being at the program level, institutional overall.
Right, but again, at the same time, if, the traditionals are pulling the UIL wage data, then we're
Yeah,
going to
we'll
look pretty
use that,
bad.
and underneath it, we'll put program placement rate or something of that order.
Yeah, which
But
is
you'll
why-
have the same thing like public staff. Is this, this will be in addition, and it will be like program level or however TWC is putting it on their
Well, let's take
website.
a look at it when you're going to go back and take
Yeah.
all these edits and things.
So we can,
This isn't the deciding into the discussion
No,
meeting.
it's
Okay.
not the end of the discussion, but we hope we've gotten most of the issues raised. And, when we do start getting things out to you and trying to get opinions back from you, it'll get a little bit complicated if everybody has different opinions. So we'll do our best to come up with what the consensus of all your comments are.
Is there
And
a
if,
timeline on when we're going to get some feedback?
well, we'll try to do it as quickly as possible. Our busy season is really the fall, and accountability is due in December. So we've got,
Timeline of the legislature.
for getting this out to them, we have to have it out by February 1.
At least the turnaround time, or is that the final?
that's, I honestly can't say. Last year was our first year to have to do it, and by the time we finished accountability and getting this ready from IT, we only got it out there just days before it was supposed to be posted, which didn't leave a lot of time for the institutions to look at it, but that's, that's the way it is. We'll do it as, February 1, is when we're supposed to have it posted. So we'll try to get it done as quickly as possible, but even us mocking it up, that's not sending it through IT for them to pull, so that's where the real time is. We'll do it as quickly as we can. And if you have any other questions or concerns after you go back and start contemplating what was done here today, just give us a buzz. You've got our email addresses on the back of the PowerPoint slides. They're all back there. Thank you very much for your time and interest, and I hope somebody's still listening online.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
For the opportunity.
And feel free to email us with any ideas.